All right, call this meeting to order.
Yeah.
As much order as we have. All right, so we're kind of just gonna jump back into it. Quick, we had a few things just to wrap up in the shared priorities. Just wanted to make sure we had everything that staff needs for it. And then we were kind of getting to the individual priorities. So unless anyone's got anything they want to throw out before we get started. Any celebrations? Anything great happened in the last 24 hours?
I made lasagna. Why?
Hell,
But I'm
let
telling my
the-
children now.
Let the record show
Wow.
Kelly made a lasagna.
They acted like they couldn't eat without me left. And I made a lasagna. And mom.
You didn't bring the lasagna? Okay.
I'm going on vacation tomorrow. I'm going to New York. to
No,
see a
New
rock
York.
band.
Could have brought all the leftovers out of your fridge so they didn't spoil.
Okay, her husband's staying home.
And I do want to point out, because I forgot to yesterday, yesterday was Stephanie's birthday. You missed it by one day. Thank you for spending your birthday
Yeah.
With us.
Wow.
with us.
And wow, we could have done so much better. Oh.
We should have brought cake. All right, yellow cake. Full
Oh, we-
circle.
I was waiting,
We have
I was
come-
waiting all last night for that. to
We have
out.
come full circle. All right, so I'll just jump through these quick. We just need to wrap up a few things. So one of the items, Parks Master Plan. So one of the things we had discussed in the prioritization is it'll finish up probably sometime this summer. I don't know the exact date offhand. But that means the budget will already be set. So what does everyone feel about, give me some direction to staff? Are we comfortable with putting some money in the budget, just kind of planning ahead for? There's probably some smaller parks projects we're gonna wanna fund and things. So just thumbs up. Comfortable seeing some of that in the budget. Yep, and we'll figure out the amount and once we get the full budget numbers and things, but
Under $1 million.
under $1 million? We can always just GO bond,
Yeah.
like every park up to 910,000. All right, the rec center discussion. Generally, it sounds like, just wanted to recap, my takeaway was everyone does want to see more details on potential rec center expansions, turf facilities. Obviously, we don't have details now on exactly what that is, but just generally give staff direction to start pulling together some ideas and know that's a priority.
Expansion, meeting.
I should just mean new growth in what our current rec assets are.
Okay.
Improvements. Options for what?
So maintaining our current location and potentially doing a turf type
I think those are
something.
two separate things.
Yeah,
They are, and is there a section in the strategic plan that allows for some free form elaboration on that need? Or a strategic section about wellness and recreation, because I think that'll inform what we want for ideas.
Yep. And then the strategic plan will cover like high level themes of what we want to focus on. So we might say one of the big themes is recreation. And then we would start mapping out, okay, over the next 3 to 5 years, what are some of those priorities? So that'll give us more, because it's hard to say in a 1 year time. It's just additional rec amenities, facilities, and then the turf facility as a separate, but
And this is all separate parks, which is the summertime activities for parks.
kind of the outdoor spaces and,
I would say as you're thinking about the rec activities, I think we need to have the focus on whether that's an expansion of the current site or whether that's current site and
new
potentially a
facilities.
facility elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I do think Ron's point was well taken last night on, or are we just doubling our overhead by having
Two
two
locations.
Yep.
On the rooted carrot component where they want the vacant lots to be south, that's
My take on it was, it's like, for now, we can't answer the question about that site till we figure out the rec piece. So we probably aren't even gonna really vote on specifically if we're interested in that
you also
piece of
have
property until we,
K funds, the K Ray funds.
yeah, cause we would have to figure all that out before we could even look if that site's an option. Me personally, I do feel working with the co-op to find the location is some
That's-
working with them on.
That's a different story than giving them lot that was given to us.
Yep, so right now, I think we're gonna prioritize as quickly as we can, trying to figure out what rec options are, so we can figure out if that's even feasible option is to look at that decision. That sounds good? Okay, and then the amphitheater piece, there isn't a specific budgeting item right now, other than just seeing as everyone's comfortable as we get in the details on it. Maybe we propose we need some money to do some conceptualization for the area, what it could be used for. But right now, it's more just trying to figure out details on what that could be.
Talking about in the front by back.
Yeah, that whole Cedar City area, potential options, uses of the space.
There's a lot of questions that we can buy back. Just a footprint of
Yep,
of an amphitheater, or we gotta buy back the whole acreage.
And whether or not we want to buy back.
yeah,
That's, you gotta know the numbers before you.
okay. So we'll keep working on that. We just aren't asking for any budget or anything right now, other than we'll come to you if we think there's something we need. Last thing, just wanted to make sure we were still on the same page, is the vape, tobacco, CBD. Does everyone, we kind of voted on the council or gave direction, but just wanted, because we said we would talk about that goal setting. Do we want to have staff start working on what that specific zoning change looks like to restrict?
Restricting on numbers of. Cause I had a complaint on how many are popping up all through town.
Can we control that? The numbers, we can't control.
That I would say, so just looking at what,
Density, yes. Number, like, arbitrary number, no.
They gotta be within a certain zone.
Yeah, and zoning,
And then how many density and
yes,
where
and
mine.
proximity to sensitive places like schools, can't regulate.
We looked at what Waterloo is or isn't attempting to do right now, some zoning changes in their code.
I haven't heard that they're addressing anything right now.
I heard otherwise, so I'm curious.
Iowa City,
Right, you know about that one.
This is one of those pieces of piecemeal changes that would need to be at least at the forefront if we were to
Yeah.
redesign comprehensive plan. There's a couple restrictions in zones against undesirable establishments that are not there in the new character districts. So we want to make sure that we provide for that, whether it's in this piecemeal fashion or the comprehensive. And I'm in agreement that, like, Kevin, can you give us any insight on what is proliferation of that establishment up to our interpretation? Like, if 3 is too much for me, can I vote no?
well, it's, I think, well, you have to establish a factual basis in some way. So
Okay.
there'd be probably committee or work session presentations. Kind of going through metrics like that with you, so when somebody attacks us, it's, well, see, we have to establish a factual basis for our determinations. It's not just arbitrary and capricious.
we'll take it as the
So,
direction
yes,
of staff will be looking at.
Related to health, safety and welfare.
Right.
That's always the connection.
So quick thumbs up at,
Public morals, I think.
Can
is
I
important.
can I ask one thing?
Yeah.
Just a quick, is it, I understand the want to do it sooner than later, but I also like, if we're in agreement, majority wise, as far as the overall zoning, are we kind of, which one would be a better in the end product, or as far as time? Is there a thought on that?
See, I think it's, I don't know that one, I mean, I don't have an objection to plowing ahead with that, because I think at the end of the day, whatever form, if any, that we have for, zoning vision, need the language of that particular description of, that by schools or something like that. So there, I don't see it as mutually exclusive, I don't see one as,
Sure. We
This
won't shoot
affecting
ourselves
so
in the
much.
foot.
One doesn't prevent the other.
yeah, I can see
Okay.
whatever change.
The work that's developing this initial one will roll into the latter, so it won't be entire waste.
Yeah, oh yeah, I don't see,
But yes, a buffer zone around schools, if that's to include the university, what does that do to the hill? That's a consideration, but at minimum, high schools on down should be a buffer zone.
Did you just say we couldn't do that though? Fred?
We can.
Oh,
Insulate sensitive places like daycare centers.
okay.
I think it's tougher with the university just because those are adults at that point.
Sure.
Well, some could legally, of course.
Right.
yeah.
Some, yeah, so that's one stigma, right?
I would ask you, do you care about tobacco? Vaping.
Yes.
Yes.
Talking every convenience store, every
Right,
grocery store,
right.
talking.
Yeah. I mean,
Restaurants.
I'm okay with the discussion happening, but yeah, I think it's good.
It will,
It's a deeper discussion.
it will be a discussion.
Every
Yeah.
Casey's, every quick store.
This is an easy.
Yeah. And in the end, does it really stop?
Everything.
No.
All right, do we have enough on that?
Yep.
Okay. I think that was the last, so we're going to move on unless anyone's got anything else on the shared priorities. Give a second in case anyone's got anything.
The fire truck replacement schedule, going back up to those current projects. And we're talking about bonding and such. Is that something that, I know we talked briefly about it at a work session maybe last year about putting that money aside in advance so that we don't have to bond? Is that why this is on here, or why is item B on there?
I think that was just as prioritizing overall capital expenses. That was one of the bigger bucket items coming up. Nobody here actually listed. It's not like everyone listed that was priority. I think it was just in the discussion about capital expenses.
Probably could have been listed under updates.
I was just curious if you can earmark money years in advance for this.
And that's bonding, because I understand it on the payment schedule, right? So that keeps.
$3 million in future, 910 grand's not gonna cover it. So should we be saving some of that up in store for these expiring trucks?
Or we just pay over 6 years.
And just to clarify, fire trucks are not subject, they're essential for work, so they're not subject to the 910.
Okay.
Okay.
Still, my preference would be save it up and spend it if you have it instead of borrowing.
And then we'll, when we get to the financial policies, we'll dive a little more in just our funding mechanisms and where we're at with each of them. Because we've got a lot of projects, so that'll be the big thing with the CIP is trying to figure out which ones come from which pools and. All right, anything else?
Cedar neighborhood, is that the
We
fire
talked about,
station?
I think we talked about most of it, the dog park,
Fire station.
the Cedar City stuff, the
Mhm.
fire station. The potential for leasing the garage for the neighborhood association. Right on.
I think so. Yes, sir.
Okay, otherwise, a few quick stage setting things, just kind of from last night. Well, I know we sometimes do little side conversations, probably just try to cut down that a little bit, just so it helps us keep moving through stuff. And just making sure we continue to let everyone talk and a little more, it is a work session, we definitely want the open conversation, but just try to police a little bit, cutting over other people, let people finish their thought before jumping in with another thought. And just because somebody takes a pause to breathe, doesn't mean they're done. Give a little space for everyone to finish up.
Are you done?
Silence is information.
All right, otherwise, we're gonna move to the individual priorities. We have a few that there was some staff background to or having ongoing conversations. So we're gonna cover those first, just two of them. And then we'll get to kind of everyone's specific individual ones. I'll do some stage setting for the individual priorities. We'll cover these first two first, though.
Did you go ahead, Mayor?
Jump in.
So, first item is a land trust. Land trust was an idea that I think several of you were contacted maybe 6 months ago about a nonprofit group that was trying to help the residents out in the mobile home park on Cedar Heights Drive. And one of the things they were looking at doing is moving through and purchasing their mobile home park. One of probably the biggest advantages that this nonprofit group had is working with Dubuque is they actually had a price grant that would help with that. The last meeting I had with the gentleman from, remember his name there? I may, the last
Can't remember the
conversation
organization name, but
we had.
I'm not quite sure if you pronounce. He just assumes. It may be Jamie.
it may be Jamie. I do apologize. I'm being presumptive.
I made the same mistake.
Okay. But that gentleman, our conversation was, it was to him from me as what is your ask of the city council? And he didn't know without the grant. So he was gonna go back and do some work on that and potentially come back with with maybe some, asks or a path forward, so.
And I can quick, kind of the context in this is, so there's been an issue with big, national investors buying up mobile home parks, jacking up the rent rates. A lot of individuals own their unit, but they rent the land. Problem is, if they can't afford to pay their rent, you can't really just move the unit, and they end up having to default the unit, their home, and just move out and don't get to take it with them. So Five Seasons is owned by a big national investor. It was being sold, a few of that investor was liquidating some of their assets, not specifically this park, but then it did come up for sale. So this group out of Des Moines, a nonprofit, works with housing affordability issues, things like that. So they had reached out to the community group. A few of them that live in the park, the individual from Des Moines came and met with us. Land trusts are essentially, you form a new entity, a nonprofit that buys the property and runs it as a community board. So it's owned by the community and you can help better control the rent rates within the district. It still runs like a business. It's still paid, everyone pays their lease and rent like they do. It's just, you don't have a profit motive at the top of it. It's more a community motive. Sometimes the city helps fund these, manage them. Sometimes financial institutions will help fund them. You're still gonna have to get a mortgage on it. The price grant that I mentioned helped cover and buy the property for the one in Dubuque, I think pretty much covered the whole cost. We've talked with Viridian if they've never really been involved with the land trust. They've got some interest because it fits their community initiative. But there's not a lot of specific expertise and details around this in the area or in Iowa a whole lot yet. So I think at this point, it's just open conversation about, is it something we want staff to keep digging in on, keep
Not clear
talking to
what the ask of
people?
us is.
I think it's really staff's time to look into what would it take, what grant options are available.
For the city to buy the land and be the landlords for the land, so
I think we would just
Actually, what
secure
happens-
that it doesn't get sold out? Is that
What happens in the end is the residents of the trailer park are the owners.
It's like a co-op.
Yes, so, when
Okay,
they have their lease, they're the owners.
And then you typically, the land trust has a specific board model. You have to have one person who's an expert in, I think, I won't know it off the top of my head, like someone who's an expert in like finance, someone who's an expert in,
You definitely need someone very qualified to run an organization like this, and I'm sure the tenants of this will not be.
yeah, so you basically have a few tenants, a few people that live there that are on the board, just as representatives of the community. But then you do have some community expertise around running an entity like
is
that.
there a connection with, these, 6 or so courts? Are they owned by the same? Or
These are not, no, these are just, the particular ones in Cedar Falls.
And Five Seasons was the particular one that was
at risk?
being looked at and discussed.
There's an article in the Courier.
One sec here.
Just one little, because I think this is also helpful, is the reason that the Five Seasons, I think maybe there was one other that gentleman had said, the reason that there was a possibility of doing anything, and tell me if I didn't hear this correctly, was because that mobile home park had taken federal grant dollars or federal loan dollars. And so and I guess the big thing here was, it's not that they're just putting the rent up, they're putting the rent up and then they're also not fixing the streets, they're not fixing the lights.
Yeah.
They're not maintaining anything. It's basically I mean, it's one thing if I pay you more and you take care of my place that I live, but you don't, you just, anyway, it was this. I've had this on my thing. I think that,
Yeah.
and I understand if there's not interest, but I definitely think we should all be aware of it. I mean, it was a potential of folks living in horrible situations and mobile home parks. Like some of the folks said, they, without this as an option to live, that's a place to live, they may not be able to live here. And so I think we all just need to be aware of it, that this wasn't a conversation, and that price grant obviously was very helpful to the city of Dubuque. This happened in Dubuque. There's a good little, if you want to see a story of how it worked there, it's a good tale of how it worked.
It sounds like right now that price grant it was a one-time funding. It hasn't been refunded, so don't know if it'll come available again.
What about the housing trust fund? It's been
That could be an option, but right now I would tell you that the Housing Trust Fund just doesn't have the funds.
Sure.
They're looking, that they're more in the $200,000 range, where this is probably gonna be in seven figures to.
Say it was a couple million, I think, for the acquisition, but there might be a role of it if they're helping support getting it set up or. But I think it would definitely, because that's a big piece of this, is just the affordability. We don't have a lot of
Yeah,
this type of affordable housing in the,
I would be
Area.
in support of proceeding with dedicating some staff time to figuring out what the options might be. I think it's important that we prioritize all of the people in Cedar Falls and, you know, that includes our mobile home parks.
I don't disagree with that. I'm just wondering that the organization, the nonprofit, I mean, is that their area of expertise is sort of to hunt down the grant money?
Yeah, but there could also be, depending on what they come back with, if there's not this particular grant money, there could be other options that we could pursue. Trying to get to the same goal.
You need to the city's perspective as
Yep.
opposed to them as a nonprofit. Okay.
The goal is just to get the ownership localized.
Localized and even in that board's hands. So,
And that oversight, maintenance wouldn't be a staff cost, so it would just be an initial heavy lift to help facilitate, and then we'd hand over. We wouldn't become the managing landlords.
we would not want.
And that's what my concern was.
Like,
Yeah.
we wouldn't want to do that with the railroad. We don't want to do that with other things. Let's not become landowners and tenant, you know.
yeah, so yeah, my understanding was essentially once it's set up, it's run by that trust. They manage it.
A lot of details, I'm sure, but I'm okay with exploring it.
The big question that when you explore is who or how do you determine who manages and runs it? Who picks, who?
Yeah, and there was a lot of structure to a housing or a
To a
land trust. It's a pretty detailed model. So, and that's part of why there's so much work to it. There's a lot of things to file, a lot of stuff to do at the federal level.
Documents would be. I don't see.
I'd like this.
Not sure.
I'd like to see too, I know it was referenced last year that this wasn't in the housing needs assessment, but they just weren't analyzed, so I'd like to see how this couples with the needs identified. And whether it really helps stave off some of that crisis that we found ourselves in. And, you know, if we can even enhance our offering by promoting this as a test case and replicate it. If, you know, it's a low cost option for, if we maintain local ownership, high quality housing.
Part of that ask is how many units are we talking
Yeah.
about throughout the city?
Yeah.
Or in this one in particular. I mean, the other reason that this was coming up is because my understanding is that the owner was interested in selling, right? So.
This is like the only one that didn't go on the
Yeah.
block,
Mhm.
probably because of some conversations maybe, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
this one wasn't listed for sale with all the other.
And the other selling point, other than having affordable housing, is that, to Kelly's point, I think, or maybe to Hannah's point, when, you know, they can't, or Danny said it, but, you know, you can't, they jack the rent, but they can't afford to leave. It's like a de facto repossession, so they lose that wealth, that beginning wealth accumulation that could be a springboard into a different type of housing. And so
Yeah.
there's a benefit of the cheaper housing, but also the maintaining that wealth for the individual to move on.
And kind of like on Dustin's point, when we say local control, like that was, some of these folks have lived there for decades and they're
Yeah.
like, look, this is a great place to live. When
Yeah.
the person lived in the community and we had a problem, we could look him in the face. But when it's somebody, it's kind of like that big structure on University Avenue where they don't know that you even exist and it just kind of, it's a sad situation. So
So this discussion is specific to Five Seasons Park, not an inclusive list of what we're seeing here. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
so I would say right now it's kind of specific to the 5 seasons and that's an opportunity that come up. I would say we'd probably look at, just for the sake of checking, I like that you brought up the housing needs assessment, because you're right, I don't think the previous one touched on it. And it sounds like we're coming up on needing to update that sometime soon, and maybe that's something we need to
Supplement.
supplement and some info on that.
But even if this is just a sample case of will it work? And then we could talk about expansion.
Yeah.
Let's look into it. Anybody opposed to?
No,
Oh, I say thumbs up.
Great.
And then we
Say
can,
thumbs up.
if it works, then we can replicate it. We won't have to
And
reinvest.
I'm not, like, I think that all sounds great, but I do remember, because when we talked about the federal dollars and how that was something, how we could get involved, you know, that was giving us an in. I recall them saying something about Country Terrace also would be in that,
Okay, Yeah, 'cause they did mention one other one.
Yeah, just so you, yeah.
Something small.
Okay, so it sounds like we have thumbs up. Any thumbs downs? Okay, and at some point we'll bring more information back for you. All right. Next, snow partners.
Next item is, snow partners. This was an idea that was brought forward, by, I believe, the Bike and Ped Committee. It's really an idea that's a good idea, but it's also, I'm not sure if it's anything that city staff should be running. It's really, they're looking for a pilot program to help, qualified recipients go in and get, help for clearing their snow and, moving forward with that. So,
And I believe in Cedar Rapids, it's like you have to be 65 plus and there's an income qualification.
there's
Essentially
agents-
saying if you're not physically or financially able to do it yourself or pay someone to do it, we'll find the volunteer. And then they find volunteers who are willing to match up. And I think there's an initial period you have to submit your home by to get it added onto.
Yeah, there's some legwork to doing it. It's not like just calling up and being like, hey, I need my stuff, you know. Like, you gotta do some work to qualify.
Yeah. Is this something that they have the capacity to facilitate on a volunteer effort? I mean, to me, snow park, a fantastic idea, but doesn't that read also known as neighbors? I mean, this is something, how does the city dictate to you whose driveway you must clear? Could this be something that the Bike and Ped facilitates?
Well, I think in those situations, you'd have that relationship and your neighbor would do the snow for you. I think this is for people that don't have that relationship. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So this would be like in terms of the city's role, basically just like posting the materials.
Yeah, it's kind of outlined right up here,
Yeah.
the different roles, what the Bike and Ped Commission would do, and then also the role of the city. So
Do you have any input on that?
We have someone from the Bike and Ped, or several, of them. Bike and Ped.
You guys wanna,
We think it's a good idea. I think we can do it.
You guys feel pretty confident with the group?
That's enough for me.
Yeah. That's good for me.
I love it too, but I also know how, you know, we've got a big load on our current, the very small staff, so I want to be very conscientious of that, so. Ron, like, what would this take for staff time, do you think?
So you see the outline there and, you know, at first blush, you want to say, hey, I don't think it would be too bad. But, you know, there's the things you don't know going into it. So what if you don't have enough volunteers and then do you get, citizens that are mad? How come my neighbor 2 doors down is getting his shoveled, but I'm not getting mine shoveled and, citywide. And I don't ever want to get any lines blurred that city staff, we have public works going to these places now and clearing snow. Cause that just can't happen.
Right.
So,
And I feel like, cause I actually sent it over to, maybe it was to Danny or Anna or something, cause I saw it one morning on the news, and I feel like it was. When you go to the city website, at least it was Cedar Rapids who they were highlighting. I feel like it specifically addresses those things, although I do understand what you're saying, cause if somebody shows up angry, it still takes time. To deal with it, even though it was very clear from the beginning. So I think it's a great thing. I know when we had a discussion about snow removal sometime in the last few years, this kind of was referred to maybe a time or two. And so I think it's a great thing, but I'm glad the Bike Ped Committee brought it up. I just I'm so hesitant to put anything until we have more staff. And I don't know that body or this body, you know, that's a discussion for another section. So I want to be like this, but I also don't want to put somebody in a bad place.
Question on this. This, I'm assuming, is not to deal with the possibility of alternate routes such on Hudson Road, Northern Road, South Main, where we have sidewalks next to double lanes of traffic getting plowed in.
Yeah, different.
Different topic, which,
you know, I think if you look there, Daryl, it's really qualification for recipients would be needs-based, limited ability
Yeah.
or limited income, those.
okay, but we do have to tackle the alternate route possibility for certain streets, like I just mentioned,
Mhm.
Rainbow Drive, Gilmore, and so on, which we'll look to go with, but that's not really a goal setting topic necessarily. Could talk
Yep.
about it, but
I think for me, in terms of the staff time, in theory, if someone's not shoveling their sidewalk, then you're gonna receive a letter from the city and then you're gonna get the same angry response, presumably. You know, well, I can't shovel my sidewalk. I can't afford to have someone shovel my sidewalk and now you're charging me. So then this would be a really great response to have to say, actually, you know, why don't you why don't you sign up for this program? You could potentially have a volunteer come and help you out, you know, and I think if it ends up being a burden on staff, then we have to reevaluate as with everything.
Cause I do think it's why it's specifically up, I think the slide mentioned it as a pilot. I think we'd be asking to commit to just try it for a year, see how it goes. And just to clarify, were we thinking if we commit to this, is it trying to put something in this winter, which is now, or are we just talking for next winter?
right now.
You gotta get your heroes first.
So it definitely feels like it'd be a,
I didn't hear what you said.
are we checking, are we wanting to try and push that for this winter, or is this looking toward next winter and making sure we've got something in place?
I actually don't think we can get very much done this winter.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Given all the moving parts that have to come together. So I'm really thinking, maybe we can do something this winter, but for sure next winter.
I'd be okay with a trial.
I think we could have code enforcement that knows certain houses that are always unshuffled. Could refer them, possibly.
So-
And we'll have as kind of the slide says there,
Yeah.
we'll try to have applications and brochures and those type of things.
Okay, so thumbs up.
I think, I just want to touch base on this nugget. I don't want it to be a piecemeal ordinance change, but we did just employ new ordinance around sidewalk and snow removal. I don't know how many else have this impact, but on South Main, most of the property access is on the west side in Chris's ward, but all of the property sidewalk is on the east side. So people that are in that subdivision have to go behind their chain link fences to try and clear snow. I'm wondering if there's some way we can mitigate that in the short term, because last year it was a huge burden upon people for the first time ever. How can we, I mean, I'm not saying I want to dedicate staff time, but to me, it doesn't seem like too big of an ask to run a snowplow down from public safety and back up. I'm just, spitballing. That's not the only place in town where that happened. But I'd like to not
Hudson Road,
continue to burden those folks this winter. What options might we have to take care of it for them or avoid them being charged for removal?
We could talk about it now real quick.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Okay. Section
Is there-
185.
Well, we'll do a thumbs up, thumbs down if everybody wants to talk about
Is there
this.
someplace else in here that it makes more sense to
I
talk
was
about?
trying to think
Well,
what we've got in the
individual
goal
priorities
document.
right next.
Let's just wrap this up quick and then we'll do a vote on that one. So really quick on this, thumbs up for pilot
Yep.
program,
Right?
pilot, try it for next year and see how it goes.
Maybe there'll be no snow and then all the heroes will win.
But I really think we
You
should
heard it here
rename
first.
it Snow Buddies.
Oh, it's a snow,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Snow Buddies.
snow, but
Snowbody.
it's 15 better.
Snow Buddies.
Are you advocating for somebody?
Snow Buddies.
She's volunteering for somebody.
I would be a snow buddy. I would-
Not a snow partner.
Because of the, some people felt buddy was masculine, too masculine. And women can go shovel too.
No, I am very much a buddy.
Okay.
Mhm.
Buddy it is.
Hannah loves her branding.
I do. It's
It's gotta be on point. All right, anywho, well, I guess since now that we're on individual priorities, we'll jump to, sounds like maybe a quick check. So the way we're gonna run these, let me do the groundwork quick, is kind of like we've done in the past where if you got an individual priority, something you want to bring up, let you bring it up and we'll try to make sure and go round robin so people can jump to make sure everyone gets a chance. Just explain quick what you're wanting to talk about. Give a, if you can, give the 30-second elevator pitch and then we'll do a quick thumbs up, thumbs down. Or if anybody has a quick clarifying question, but just see if there's enough. We get at least 4 people that want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. If not, we won't. All right, so sounds like snow removal and wanting to review, I'll just recap that. It sounds like wanting to discuss looking at the routes and how we're handling some of the areas that maybe are a little
extenuating circumstance.
On this, if I may.
The edge cases.
The places that seem to have come up in the last year or two, or 5 years or 7 years for me. Hudson Road, sidewalk on the west side is an area where there's no homes that are frontaging. Like South Main's got the same thing. Warley Road, coming down by McGee Construction and Five Corners. Rainbow Drive coming in. There's a number of places in town where you got 2 lanes of traffic on a major, excuse me, 2 lanes in each side, 4 lane basically. Major arterials that get plowed 4, 5, 6, 7 times a snowstorm. They continuously plow. And
First Street too, Daryl, I think was another one that.
yeah, that's.
Yeah.
Yeah, someone came and talked
Yeah.
about First
Yeah.
Street, didn't they?
The DOT picking the snow all the way to the windows almost. And, there's alternate route process that you can apply for in the code, 19-185. And I was actually considering doing a referral on this to get a little more procedures in place that allows a person to get it. Because it seems when we brought it up last year, it was just kind of rejected.
So just a quick check, make sure we want to talk about it.
Yeah,
Okay, we got at least 4. So and just remember, for everything we talk about, options are always, are we wanting to refer something to a work session, give some direction to staff? Something I can take on. So I think this is really one to look at. Are we want to probably have staff take a look at which areas are we having some issues with how snow is piling up on the sidewalks with the street setup and everything, and look at alternative options besides just enforcement?
I was thinking of doing a referral, getting a city map showing some streets that I'm aware of, and then people could add to that, and then discuss the committee meeting or work session.
I think phase 1 would be ensuring that we're not sending out notices saying you need to shovel your sidewalk when we haven't shoveled ours.
And that was a internal thing we changed after the first snow. Us was saying, well, we're not gonna do any enforcement until our city sidewalks are done.
Piggybacking on that. I'm wondering if it's possible for the walkability aspect, we don't want to vacate the need of these sidewalks to be cleared. We want to have them cleared, but are there, from maybe the bike and ped recommendation, major walkable thoroughfares that are our responsibility for public safety? To say, hey, we're gonna clean these, even though they are the responsibility of the resident homeowners on these select routes. And we could massage that with an addition to the code to say, like we do with the no parking enforcement, whether it's 1-sided, 2-sided every other day. Say these streets are covered in this fashion. Because we, correct me if I'm wrong, but we did just implement that change in code last year, where now the homeowner adjacent to the sidewalk has to clear it. Unless it's a major thoroughfare bike trail or a recreational trail. In some of those cases aren't cleared anyway. Half of them aren't cleared because of snowshoeing and or cross-country skiing. Could we do that kind of solution so that we make sure these routes to the grocery store and to the gas station are clear?
Yeah, or, and like, you know, thinking about Hudson, like there's sidewalk on both sides. One of them is a bike trail, one of them is, you know, just shoveled by,
This way.
right, and so it's like, could we go through and say, we make the priority that you cross the street, and walk on the safer side of the street, further away from the road.
That's part of what's language in the code right now, the alternate route. But the alternate route, it says can be no longer than 15 feet total distance, so there's gotta be some more clarity on situations like Hudson Road.
But that's like when you're, like, if there's a massive pile on your corner, you could
Yeah.
like make your little side path,
But that's the 15 feet, sure.
right?
But the way I read the current possibility of applying for an alternate route, it doesn't apply to something like Hudson Road from 12th to Linden, is the
Right.
street. And there's no home frontages to it.
Right,
And
yeah, so I guess, so
South Main is the same way.
I think, yeah, having staff do some kind of like looking at a map and telling us, here's the potential, like, and saying, you know, you could pick, you go through and you choose all of these, this is how much staff time it's gonna add. If you choose, you know, whatever, so that we can kind of start to like narrow it down and understanding, is that all the time? Is it every time it snows? Is it a certain, snowfall over a 24-hour period, whatever? Like, I think there has to be more information than just these are the ones we're always shoveling.
I think there's a standard that the city goes by. Chase can address this when we would give a ticket or code enforcement. As if it's the dusting of snow, like a quarter inch.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. I don't know if there is a
I
standard.
don't know that offhand.
Okay. The subject to the opinion of the code enforcement person, generally speaking, and with traveling, like up at a college or foot traffic on a sidewalk makes a difference. But there's also
Safety related.
safety
Yeah.
related.
Yeah.
There was some sidewalks that were considered sidewalks to nowhere, that if there's another sidewalk or bike trail on the other side, could be abandoned for the winter.
Yeah.
That type of thing. Because I don't see a reason for the city to break up their equipment. Well, not break up, but they plow 6, 7 times onto the sidewalk. They wait till all the rest of the city is done and then they come and do the sidewalks later in the trails. Then I've seen on Hudson Road, this little sort of snow blower bobcat thing just beating the heck out of itself, going through the frozen slush that, you get those slush snowstorms. And it's an ice block and you're destroying the equipment. And I could see on the bike trail side clearing that, but on the little sidewalk side on Hudson, let it go for the winter.
So,
Can I just say
Go
one thing? And
Yeah.
obviously I'm over, I just want us to all to remember, because when that conversation was happening, and some of us maybe don't think like this. I know I don't, because I'm mobile, but it's also a mobility thing for folks. To be able to get around. So if you're upgrading mobile and the standard walker, you may not think of these things, but that was also a big part of the conversation. I just want to make sure this group knows.
Yeah, I think that's why I can't just be like, oh, it's fine, let's leave it.
And also the other part that I keep thinking, and obviously I'm overruled, but again, we've got a very small staff and every little bit we keep putting on. It's taxing to them, but it's also more of a cost because then we were running overtime, right, Chase? Yeah.
so I'll just recap it quick. So we essentially, it sounds like we're giving some direction to staff to come back to the group with some ideas around where those trouble spots where just because of the layout of the streets and everything, it causes an issue. Some thoughts and recommendations on how we can maybe administratively handle those situations. If it seems like it makes sense for the city to take ownership versus expecting the residents who are adjacent to that to have to deal with it.
And could we also include which of those are scheduled to be redone? Like which street, okay, like Waterloo Road, we know is tragic. And at some point in time, we have to redo Waterloo Road. So can we, if we have a timeline, that's plotted out, can we include that information as well?
And right now, what I've got for some of those areas, Hudson Road, First Street, South Main, Five Corners, Count Waterloo Road extended. I'm sure there's some others, but
So
So can I just go over some practicality of what we're gonna do then? Because as you know, when we hit this winter time, you could have 3 snows in a week. And the priority is gonna be the streets. That's where the priority is gonna be. So after that, if we have to now take staff to start moving over to trails and sidewalks, they'll do that. And, but if all of a sudden we have another snowplow or snow event, we're gonna be back on the street. So we're not going to be able to send out any letters to any of the sidewalk throughout town if we don't have our own responsibility streets done. So some of those could end up being weeks, literally. I mean, we have times when, because here's the other thing, we can only run our guys so long in snowplows with, as you do that, just because of their chauffeur's license rules. And
Union contracts and so on.
So I mean,
They need to sleep.
it does get a little bit complicated.
because Stephanie, what's the
Take
current,
volunteers.
like, from when the snow falls, how much time do people have?
48 hours unless there's another event, then the clock starts again.
Yeah, Cause we could maybe then, maybe it's, we set a cap of, okay, even if we haven't been able to get ours done within a place because of issues like that, maybe it's, okay, but still within. 96 hours, like 4 days, it's still get enforced at that point regardless, even if we're not able to get to ours.
Yeah, and I think,
This, again, I'm not saying we should do that. I'm just saying we could at least look at some of those, if the group decides to vote on wanting staff to.
What I'm looking at, and a handful of these spots, and it's not necessarily very many, is if there's a big bike trail on the other side, I'm speaking Hudson Road predominantly. In my case, but I know South Main and so on. But, to abandon the section of sidewalk, I don't need the city out there plowing a little strip when there's a 10-foot bike trail on the other side of Hudson.
And we look
So
at
I
that.
think the ordinance provides that we can do that right now, right?
We'd probably just do one on the side. on
Yeah,
that one.
either bike trails or,
It just says if removal of snow and ice from an abutting sidewalk would create an unsafe condition, it would be a hardship on the owner. As determined by the city, an alternate route may be approved by the director of community development, which is that.
so if they come in with those or.
And then you gotta apply, there's an application.
Yep, and, there's also you mentioned sidewalk to nowhere, there's a sidewalk that, and somebody comes in and says, hey, do I really have to do this? We can, I think administratively, that we have some methods in there.
So it sounds like you guys are kind of asking us to just proactively, administratively look at some of those, instead of
Practically.
expecting residents to come in and apply.
Yeah, because practically in those cases, we've got a code enforcement officer that's out there observing, writing a letter, and then coming back and saying, hey, this is a completely pointless one to enforce. So can we eventually come up with a list of those that we aren't gonna enforce?
and don't we have a sidewalk to nowhere list already? Because we're trying to do complete sidewalks.
Oh,
We have sidewalk gaps, like infill. I don't know where that sidewalk to nowhere, but it's gaps.
It's a way more fun thing.
Okay.
I think you should just take that home.
Well, you wouldn't want
When
to,
you're out there snow buddying. you can just-
You
Yeah,
know,
big
practically speaking, Ron, I get what you're saying there, where if you don't have the staff hours, then we have to hire. I don't know if there's any part-time positions that are unfilled for the seasonal work. I'm betting there are. But if we've got a gator with a snow chewer on it that we could use in some of those instances, great. In the long term, it'd be great to have the snow buddies, but in the short term, Kevin, do we have the ability to say, hey, preferential non-enforcement on particular areas that are a hardship, or is it just under the same discretion that we have now of we'll work with you upon request?
I'm big on standards of some kind.
Yeah.
We establish a policy and we follow it, not ad hoc.
Yeah. And
But there's a little wiggle room in that ordinance.
there is, but only to 15 feet.
Yeah, and I know with Anna on the interpretation of that ordinance, it's for one's own responsibility as an abutting owner. You get to a corner and it's just impossible to pile up there. What you're talking about is an alternate route off premises, off your
Yeah.
responsibility. I think that's slightly different.
it would be another, component of the process.
Well, we can add it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
The answer is no.
Because it says the alternate route is no longer than
The answer is
15
yes.
foot distance.
Thank you, sir.
So that would disqualify what I'm speaking.
So I didn't answer directly, Justin. Council can establish those, right? And we can do it administratively or with one.
Like what I don't want, yeah, what I don't want, and I'm, just advocating for one or two property owners here on South Main, they've reached out and said, hey, I have difficulty getting all the way around, so they gotta go all the way down Spruce Hill to the intersection to come back up sidewalk that may or may not be snowplowed in their wheelchair to get a shovel onto the sidewalk, go back in their wheelchair, back around the block to get to their house, because we've said, we're gonna fine you if you don't remove it. I don't want that. I also don't want that sidewalk to be covered in snow for those walkers that go to Fairway. So you're danged if you do, danged if you don't. What solutions can we come up with? Next year, it sounds like we've got a great one coming, but in the short term, I don't want to ticket those people that can't get out to their backyard that doesn't have a
So
fence.
now, quick jump in here. Yeah, I'd say just for the sake of, because we won't solve this tonight and keep things moving. The direction it sounds like would be just some direction to staff, with some thoughts, probably come back to a committee meeting or work session with some ideas around how do we administratively proactively address some of these trouble areas.
Last point, Chase, correct me if I'm wrong, but we can't volunteer to drive a snow throw. We can't volunteer to drive one because it's being. Right?
Justin wants to.
Dusted.
That's what I'm asking. So we can't do it with city equipment. Therefore, the snow buddies would have to be the back.
I've got a snow blower if you're free.
Yeah, I'll hit you up. It's right there across the street.
I just, we're all gonna be snow buddies because we're so eager for it.
We should.
I didn't know.
Mhm.
We expect to see everybody out there with your.
That's
snow
what
buddies.
becomes
Your
fun.
matching outfits.
Ron's gonna be a snow buddy. All right, so thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
Thumbs up, support, and thumbs down. 6-1, I think. So, all right. Okay, so we've all got notes on that.
Who was the note, who's down?
Me. I just don't wanna have this conversation.
Oh.
We had this conversation just like a year or two ago.
Mhm.
Let me tell you, it's a conversation to nowhere.
Conversation.
All right, so we'll do kind of round robin. That's where we'll open it up. And again, I want to encourage, don't feel like you have to feel bad bringing up your individual priority. It's just, if it wasn't one that multiple people shared, we were going to leave it off the list and let everyone do it. So again, do a round robin, so don't feel bad if I tell you you gotta wait for someone else. So who wants to jump in?
Hi, everyone. I'm Hannah.
30-second elevator.
I love infill. So I would like to propose developing pre-approved home building plans that promote middle housing options, preserve neighborhood character, and encourage infill development to support a diverse and sustainable housing supply. So in my neighborhood, just a few blocks from my house and Gil's house, people have torn down some old homes, which is fine. They were very pretty. And in their place, they've put up homes that look a lot like the homes in Chris's neighborhood, which don't really fit with Gil and I's houses. So I think it would be great if we could see some pre-approved designs that also would allow more accessibility for people who aren't necessarily builders of houses all the time. They're just wanting to come into the industry. They're, potentially someone who has a little bit more than a DIY experience, but it would just speed up the process, have plans that we know are good, and would be, I think, a really positive option for keeping some of the character in the neighborhood without having to put those character rules on it if we're trying to avoid those potentially in the future.
But that would
so-
be a nudge, because you couldn't force them to do it without.
It would
It'd just be.
It would just be available.
And I think it'd
Yeah.
probably be more cost effective, right?
Yeah,
Because I think
definitely.
we have to pay for those
And
calls.
so really quick before we jump into conversation, any clarifying questions to understand what she's proposing?
I guess I would clarify. Is this the same thing that was proposed 2 years ago to have like 3 ready-made potential plans that are pre-approved, so you don't have to go buy your own set plans?
Yes,
And it doesn't limit other options. It
Yeah.
just,
correct.
okay, so it is the same thing we talked about and it was a budgetary.
I think the thing that's added, not added to it, but it was the intent, is that these would be already pre-approved by staff, say, okay, this meets all the codes. So somebody coming and doing it doesn't have to wonder, can this be built?
Yeah.
It's already been
Or pay an
reviewed. and-
architect to come up.
Yeah.
with this.
Right.
So any other clarifying questions?
I guess a comment, not a question, but when we talked about it 2 years ago, I Googled and pulled up booklets so we could buy plans for 1999, a whole bunch of plans. There was an architect in the audience, I don't remember his name offhand, but he said typically those plans are altered by architects anyway to fit the personal needs and styles of the person. So I don't, on the budget, we wanted to spend 35,000.
So really quick, it sounds like you're about to argue against it. We haven't voted yet if we're even gonna talk about it. So is this a clarifying question or are you
Well-
trying?
Just clarifying what we talked about 2 years ago.
We'll get into that after we vote. Do we even want to talk about it? So any clarifying questions or thumbs up if you want to talk about it? Well, we got more than 4, so, all right. Now we can talk about it. Go ahead.
Well, like I just said, I don't want, it sounds like a great idea, but for $20, you can Google blueprints and presumably the firms that do this one company right here, Architectural Designs, selling quality home plans for generations. You can pull them up. We don't have to spend a lot of time with city staff. If you want to spend a couple thousand on it, sure, but not it was proposed like 35,000.
But that's not, the kicker is it's pre-approved by the city. So, I mean, sure, maybe the city wants to buy those $20 plans, but we have to review them so that we know, okay, here's a lot, it fits on the lot, yes, that's gonna work. Done. Like, then you don't have to wonder if it works or not.
The process of building a home, you've got setback requirements in the Euclidean zoning, which are different than the form-based zoning. You got mandatory building lines. I think you're going down the path of spending a bunch of money and it would be used by limited number of people. I think.
Well, I have now spoken with multiple people because it's kind of a passion project of mine. And people who are in the home building landscape that are currently building homes are interested in this.
Other thoughts?
I'll say my main contention with it before was like government overspending, you know, a federal report talks about $40,000 ball peen hammer. That's not acceptable to me. So to me, if we can get it for less than 30 grand, then it's something we can talk about. But again, it was money that was unnecessary at the moment and extra exorbitant in my view. So what would we be able to do? Would we be talking about 3 pre-approved plans for no more than 15,000? Or as many plans pre-approved as you can get for 15,000? Or do we even know any of that?
Just to check, was that cost, what was that cost for
For
that previous,
an architect to give us. Is it?
for an architect to
Make the plans.
come with plans that they know fit our,
We never got past the budgeting part, so I guess I don't 100%, but this was something that we had. But when you, can I piggyback on
Yes.
your people who are supporting?
Piggy.
There were professional folks in our presence in council chambers advocating that this would help small builders be able to provide the service and the cost, you know, however that process of building a home, which I've never built a home, and nor do I want to, but that would help absorb some costs, because you're not doing what Daryl is, yeah, anyway.
Working with the architect.
We had
I think-
professional, just, yeah, high level, people who were professional builders supported it.
So maybe instead of obviously green lighting, okay, let's put it into the budget. Maybe what we first need to do is have some information to know what those things would look like, what those plans, what the potential is, or perhaps we have that information from before that just never got all the way moved forward.
We don't have any detailed information. It was brought forward by staff because it was a recommendation of the downtown plan. So we were looking at what other recommendations out of that plan in order to implement it, should staff be suggesting to council. So since it didn't get funded, we didn't explore it any further to what it would involve, how far would we get, what it means for downtown character district versus an R1 or R2 area. We never got into it.
Do we know even if the other communities have done something similar so that?
Yes, the other communities.
So we could sort of borrow what they, you know, what they have.
Yeah.
I'm looking at going, it's gonna pass. I'd like to see a cap on, if we don't know if it's gonna cost us 35 grand, let's not assign 35 grand into fiscal year 26's budget. Get the benefit of it. I also hear a little bit of concern of, if there's a developer that's wanting to build some infill, and they've told you, hey, if you pick up the dime for the architect's plans, I'll go ahead and build it. That's an unfair advantage for that individual. So I know that's a totally different thing that's not being expressed. It's just a concern I have, playing devil's advocate, if you will. It's a wonderful tool to get that infill done so that they save the cost. I'm okay with it. I just don't want it to be exorbitant.
Well, let me add another thought that comes to mind here. I've talked with home builders that don't want to build at Cedar Falls because of the difficulty it is to build at Cedar Falls. I think it would be, before we go this path, we would want to quiz and do a survey of multiple builders in the communities around us that build and not in town here. What could Cedar Falls do to make developing or building homes easier to match what other communities around us do?
I'm not saying no to that. I'm gonna say that it's not relevant to this conversation. You're segueing off to a whole different, but yeah, but we're talking about this specific
I
initiative.
think, Daryl, I mean, the right response to that is that that's exactly what this is designed to do, right? So it's gonna help reduce the overall cost to get one of those infills built by paying
gotta
one
know-
time.
What's the obstacles that we have?
Right. Well, the obstacle, I think, is who gets to say what it looks like and how much is it gonna cost us? We just have to extend a little bit of trust and say, okay, these are three options. The developer can come in and do a different option. That's totally still an option. The cost, though, that happens when you come with an architect's plan and then it has to be changed and then reworked, those are all expenses adding up that wouldn't need to be there if we have this option, and it'll get us some housing. So I think it's an attempt in the right direction as a
That's part of the
compromise.
puzzle, sure.
Yeah.
You've got things like, what does CFU mandate that other mid-America or Alliant doesn't dictate in another community?
It's not a mandate. It's just an option if you want to save some cost.
No, I know.
And again, that's definitely a discussion. I just don't think it's relevant to the specific discussion about pre-approved plan.
Well, look at it. Okay, I also remember this, that the discussion also included like, hey, this is maybe for the person who is a builder that builds like one or two. This is not like someone who's maybe would help somebody who's going and developing hundreds of acres of land. This is like the person maybe who builds a house or two a year, and how it could help. And in the end, it helps our community because we're getting quality help.
Well, if we're talking about infill, then there's a way to geographically restrain the availability of those plans. Yeah.
So it sounds like what we're kind of asking for then is probably sending direction to staff to put some thoughts together, maybe some comparative examples to bring back to the group to look at so we can see costs, and everything. So probably committee work session, something to, we're asking for more information before we're greenlighting any sort of budget.
Yeah.
Or anything.
Did we have enough information last time where we couldn't get it into the budget discussion this year? That was a question you
We really didn't look
Okay.
into, I mean, I guess what I'm hearing is that we should ask the other communities that did this, how much did it cost them? How many examples did they get? That's probably the fastest information we can get.
Yeah, that's great. So my understanding is that we're not even thinking that this is gonna be in this year's budget. We're gonna be like,
Right.
just gathering information for possibly having it in next year's budget.
Unfortunately, I think that's a reality, just because by the time with planning's workload now and trying to get that information and, you know, we're a couple weeks away from getting our valuations and starting the budget process, that would be quick turnaround.
Good.
I can be
And
respectful of that. I wish we would just, but yes, I can be respectful of wanting more information.
so maybe a couple other thoughts, just, you know, the plans aren't gonna be an end all be all. I would see them as, you know, you would have a variety of plans that may be for, infill lots that are challenging because they're different than some of the other size, lots. But it's not going to, like I said, not gonna be an end all be all. We'll still have to, do reviews on lots and setbacks and zoning and easements and all of those things to make sure, that those are fitting there. But I do see, with the Housing Trust Fund, this could be a help to some builders that are in, looking at that. Hey, how do I meet that LMI? And these plans could help offset some of those costs in the LMI, so.
Would these be plans specifically towards LMI target?
I could see where, not necessarily towards LMI, but they could be for some of these challenging lots, you know, that are a little bit smaller. They meet the actual lot density, but now, okay, so hey, here's a couple options because the lot's smaller.
I mean, if it was dedicated 3 pre-approved LMI qualifying plans, I'd give you 35 grand.
Right now.
Cause that might actually help if there were some that then you're like, hey, this is a
But
decent
I
home.
mean,
But
that's-
I think
that's
that helped,
assuming a lot.
Yeah,
that helped
yeah.
keep the cost down when
Yeah.
you're talking about
So,
the end of the LMI.
But I mean, instead of building a house for 450 grand, if we can say, here's a house for 200,000, here's the plans, build it, then they're gonna help set that offsetting requirement.
Yes.
Fine.
what's going to keep the builder from selling that $200,000 house for $375 because there's a demand for it?
So as we're setting up and we're working with Allers, the law firm, and we're putting together the tip things, there's criteria right in there that comes from HUD that actually spells out, here's, if for this size house, that's all you can sell it for. And those, so it'll be a 10-year TIF, and each year that report comes out, and that report will indicate what those houses would sell for, qualify for them LMI.
Isn't that something similar to Habitat for Humanity on what they can turn around and sell?
I'm not as familiar
Yeah,
with
because they
that.
are limited.
But I think it ties in with the urban revite. So
Yep.
urban revite's over the certain area, let's pick Walnut and 12th, then that lot is a vacant lot, and we happen to have this house plan. If they want to use urban revite to help finance that, we can help set those parameters like Rob was talking
That's all the
about.
more reason to have these plans then, because they're gonna be
Yeah.
capped at the selling price or whatever that formula is for that, so we can decrease costs so that more people will be
Yeah.
built.
So then what happens if the homeowner sells the home in the second or third year? Good on them, new person,
Yeah.
but they sell it for 375. Good on them.
So there is no, that's one place that the state statute falls short on. So
So it could happen,
yes.
I'm sure.
Now, there's other programs, I'll use Fox Ridge years ago. It was a forgivable loan. After the 2008 floods, we had the first time new home buyer. Those were all set up on forgivable loans. So over a 5-year time period, if you sold it and halfway through, you would still owe half of what that.
That's like the rental to owner program, 5-year.
Yep. So,
10,000.
so right now though, it's not set up like that just because of the state statute.
So anything else, just to try and keep us moving through?
So potentially, we could be saying tonight, we could approve we could add it to the budget as long as it meets the LMI qualifications.
If you wanted to, you could set it as a cap if you're saying, well, we'd be interested in seeing a plan that goes up to this amount in the budget.
Yeah.
Did you want to say an amount?
I'm for that.
I'm for that.
35.
So it's 35, right?
Yeah.
I don't like
I
going
think
that
that's
high.
a lot for 3 plans, but
Well,
Like,
it's
it's-
not
it's-
necessarily
it's a
say three.
cap.
let's set that cap.
Yeah.
Put it in there, see what we can get for it.
Okay, so thumbs up, thumbs down to that? All right.
I'll be checking them off my list.
Okay. Hands don't get to talk anymore. Just kidding. What else someone got?
Maybe you should only give them so much money each.
I thumbs up there.
And then just remember, we'll be talking financial policies right after we get through all this, so.
If we help them build this house, we'll make them all snow buddies. That'll be part of their 5-year plan.
5 years.
Find, 5 years, put prairie grass in the right of way in the front.
Yeah.
Good, that's all.
All right, any other individual priorities?
Want to talk about the fire station, North Cedar?
We did.
Oh, we did.
I think we,
All right, the only other one I got is, and I think Kelly's talked about this before too, that the, Lincoln Street from the river to city limits is a pretty treacherous stretch to ride bike and walk.
Yeah.
So I have not seen any of that being in the long term, like a bike trail, particularly a bike trail would be preferable, so.
A little more accommodating for folks who live on that very little last bit.
Like been going east towards Waterloo.
Correct, yeah.
a quick thumbs up, down about discussing or needing more information.
It's just like.
Yeah. Yep, so,
Yeah.
can staff give a little more context to that? I don't know much
I
about
wasn't
what,
familiar with, say that again, the limits where you were talking about.
The ability for that walkability
Yeah, like
from.
Where though? Where to
from-
where?
From the,
gateway.
gateway to city limits.
Of the east.
From really the old, from the underpass, from the underpass to city limits, there is no sidewalk or place to walk. or
Okay,
something.
okay. I was on the wrong side of the river, sorry.
Yep,
That's where the old skating rink was.
Yeah.
Down to
Yeah,
the-
There really is no site, you're right.
Where there used to
Yeah.
be Z's.
And there's some residential out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, first blush, just knee jerk, if we're doing the amphitheater planning and some of those things out there, that would be probably something that we want to include in that planning.
Yeah.
Because if, depending on how extensive, that area is, it may be several years to put everything in that and phasing that, and then the reconstruction of Lincoln Street would then, make those accommodations as well.
It could go right into the dog park and the campground and the splash pad
There we go.
And the
Got
BMX
it.
park.
and the BMX park.
So I think for that one, we'll look as part of the Cedar City, and
Yeah.
if that doesn't move forward, we'll still make sure we're looking at it. As part of
I
the-
think get a little
as we have some
extended.
bike and ped people here, it can be discussed with.
Gil's past is 35K.
Yeah. get a little extended.
We didn't put a budget.
Was there,
on it.
was there, I didn't think there was a cap on it.
For people that are younger, cap in this case means a limit to your spending, not a proof line.
Oh, you're up, you're showing your
I'm young, I'm hip,
coolness.
I'm with you.
Showing your age.
I
You're
know.
younger, not young.
All right, so I think we had a thumbs up on that. Anything else on it?
Yep.
All right.
I'm trying to recall, I've been trying to have access to what I submitted, but I do remember that I had childcare,
Mhm.
in there. And
I can tell you
I
what you
guess
had if you
we'll-
want me to.
what's that?
I can tell you what you had if you want me to.
Well, the rest of it, I'm feeling pretty warm and fuzzy, that I don't need to like get greedy, but the childcare thing, I guess I don't have a solution, I just would like to know if anybody else has a concern about the lack of childcare in our community, and what, if anything, the city could do to partner or help or something that in that situation, because I don't think it's gonna get better. Yeah, maybe it won't, maybe it won't even get better with us, but childcare not only for the community, but I also, a little blurb, because they kind of piggyback off each other, but not totally. I also was thinking, as an employer, because I come from a place where childcare is offered, and I know that's a big ask, but I believe it does benefit everyone. Childcare for our employees, which I envision those as possibly two separate things.
Quick thumbs up to discuss, thumbs down? Okay.
I know it's not a solution, but a fledgling of an idea is something of a subsidy, even a partnership of, hey, if you'll provide childcare services for the community, including staff, childcare needs at a rate, we may subsidize to a certain amount. Obviously, figures to be determined, but is that even?
Here's my
Doable.
concern about all of it.
Mhm.
The reason a lot of times we have a problem getting childcare, I believe, is because you don't have enough people that want to work in childcare, and
Mhm.
people don't want to pay for it. No, yeah, so this is what I'm saying. I have a friend, my former employer, she runs the childcare center there, and they've been staffed well the whole time. You want to know why? Because they pay $15 an hour, because they pay what my previous employer's minimum wages. So I'm not against that, but I think that if you can build all the childcare centers in the world, if you don't have people who work them, because they can make more money somewhere else in a less stressful environment. So there's my little tidbit. I think we gotta look at, like, we gotta have a little control to make sure we're not just throwing money in the wind that's really not doing a dang bit of good. So
For
I'm
the,
open to whatever. I don't have a
Right.
solution. I
Yeah.
just would.
That
wish
could be
we
part and
look at it.
parcel to that, is to say, hey, if we're going to subsidize, you must meet these minimum standards so that we can ensure they have enough help at a good rate, workable,
And
whatever.
the other part of that, and I understand what you're saying, and I don't want to think that I'm throwing shade to the places that are providing childcare. I mean, they've got to pay their costs. So there's just so many things to it that I don't know how to fix it, but I just wonder if we could help, not only for a benefit for our employees, quality, good childcare, but is there a way we can also, kind of a separate thing, work to help the childcare crisis in our community?
I think it's saying the same thing.
That, it really
Yeah.
needs to be working with the business community. Because that's really what we're talking about.
Right.
Is how,
Whatever it is.
how do you free up the labor market, you know?
But I don't know if this body's ever,
yeah, for the sake of expediting, because this could be a big conversation. Because I know I sent you all the email for a childcare resource and referral, the event they've got coming up. I would love to have her maybe just come in and give an update presentation and where we're at as a community. So, I will try to get a resource and referrals, kind of the regional group that coordinates a lot of childcare efforts. They're the ones that worked with, like, City of Waterloo helped get land to get a new childcare facility built out on the north end. I know they had talked with Western Home about possible partnerships and things and land in Cedar Falls. That opportunity came up, so they went with that one. It might just be, maybe I can talk with her and see if she'd be willing to come either present at a committee meeting, something for us to have some discussion with her on whether we're seeing for needs in Cedar Falls, whether possible ways the city, because she does have a lot of thoughts on how the cities can help with supporting either through finding subsidized land. How do you essentially have to buy down the cost in some way to get it to be affordable, to get more? Yep. So I'd be willing to commit to working with her. I have a childcare resource and referral, and maybe it's a committee, having her come in and talk with us.
Become a civic need.
Yeah.
That's part of our jobs, is to see how we can collaborate and provide what an individual can't for themselves. So
Actually, I would almost, in my mind, think of that as a work session, have her come present on some of the information and give us a chance to just roundtable with her and learn more about the problem.
We have to buy down those other costs that they'll enable them to pay that wage that will attract people. So,
Yeah, and how do you fight on the cost, but also ensure that whoever's gonna do the job
Right.
is getting paid well.
Right.
Or as well as they can.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, thumbs up?
Yep.
All right. What else?
Yeah, one that's not gonna cost you a dime.
Yeah.
Ron,
Way to go, Chris.
so I am getting continual feedback from folks that it is extremely difficult to communicate with our elected officials via email. The reason that is we had to, correct me if I'm wrong, change the IT process to the Civic Plus, whatever the platform is, and go away from being able to have an email that went directly to council, because we're not all using our city email. Is that accurate?
Maybe
I don't
Couple
think
years
the last
ago.
part, it wasn't the city email. but-
My understanding from Julie was that it was.
The problem is, I think, Chris, is that someone can't click a button on the website to say, email all council members. Like, they can click a council person an email, click a council person an email.
Yeah.
They can't do one button to.
Cause yeah, that's a big thing I've heard too, is people just want the message all button.
Right, and so I think that's what Chris is probably referring to.
Right.
You can't have that one easy button. I think if they're
Well,
not all, but I
They
think.
don't have
they
that.
don't.
Yeah, currently, it's not.
Because if they're
The,
not all on the email,
I think-
using city email, that's the case,
I think
right?
that's the problem.
that's the reason, though, was a decision about that. Because you can forward externally. So council@cedarfalls.com used to be the group email, which then got sent as a distribution list to the individual council addresses. There was a policy decision because our insurance company advised, hey, it might not be a great idea to forward your internal assets to, say, an AOL account or a Gmail account. So it was a decision around policy to stop using their distribution list. The decision on council at that time was not to force people to use a cedarfalls.com email address. The decision at that council time was to say, your contact me page is up to you. If you want to say, here's my cell phone number, here's my home address, you can send me a snail mail, you can do that. Or if you want to say, here's my personal email and here's my cell phone number, 24/7 contact, you can do that. That changed then to, because of the new way that emails are coming in, a link on our contact us page that takes you to a form on the city's webpage to send your email as a no reply through Civic Plus. That program was an add-on after the decision. So it's not that we have different email exchange or email domains that's causing the problem. It's internal policy decisions.
So
That's
I'd like
causing the.
to reconsider the policy decision. I think we need to all get back on the city email and stop creating barriers to citizens communicating with us.
Well, if I can speak, Jen, you could probably speak to this specifically, but I think it was part of it was a checklist of security measures, which is why the insurance company, will it impact our insurance coverage, our insurance risk, our underwriting, if we change it to allow us to go back to sending that distribution list to everybody, even if their external email addresses. Cause I think that was what I had always heard as a justification for that current policy was it changes our underwriting because that's an unadvised policy and we changed it to adhere to these security measures. We can do it, but it was a security measure. If I'm understanding correctly, it was a security reason, but I don't know how big of a security reason, or can you answer just that piece?
Yeah, good.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, it is true, our cybersecurity, they do not like it that we take an internal email and send it out to an external. That is one of the things that they say is a risk.
But that's,
But can I tell you today, oh, if we do it, we won't be covered, or if we do it, it's gonna cost us $10,000 more in premium. I mean, no, I mean, I have those answers, but it is a best practice not to do.
But every year they have a list of
Yeah.
things that you have to do. And first of all, the number of people that are willing to insure us for cybersecurity is going down, down, down.
Well,
The
it was one.
restrictions.
It was one.
Yeah.
So when they ask for something,
We
we
do.
usually try to accommodate it because they're our last hope for reasonable pricing for cyber.
And let me tell you, cybersecurity insurance this year is paying off. There is an ROI.
So if we all were on the Cedar Falls email, then we could get a button back that says, send everybody an email. Yes, that if it's all on the cedarfalls.com, yes, we could have that button. So I've already changed the policy that everyone has to have a Cedar
There
Falls
should be a
email.
discussion on that because many of us on council at the time, and some still on council, felt that emails are sent out all the time to external emails. So that talking point I don't buy into. And citizens have said to me that I'm not getting my emails when it's routed through who want to have a direct email access to me. And I prefer to keep my AOL that I've had for decades. And I don't, seriously don't buy into the security thing because the city sends out emails all the time. They're external. So.
You didn't have to say you had AOL for decades.
That's
redundant.
That's a foregone conclusion then.
How about 4 decades?
yeah, I mean, to that point, it's fair, we are sending these emails out externally now, so we're not mitigating any security risk. There's also the ability to whitelist known email addresses. All of our email addresses are known. There was some interplay between receiving an email from an external domain and then forwarding it back out to other domains that caused some unintentional blocking, where we could establish rules with those to make sure they go through by intentional whitelisting and then zero trust everything else. I think there's some decisions there that still do need to be talked about because without any emotion in it, I'm using the cedarfalls.com exchange, okay? This isn't me advocating for my own defense. But the rationale is citizen wants to be able to reach out with some candor. Some of them don't trust a domain that they don't know. They want to talk to you directly. That was the main rationale behind, I want to use a Gmail, or I want to use my cell phone, or I want to use snail mail. We don't need to force anybody's hand. We also don't want to limit the ability with which our constituents can reach out to us. I think that today, without the city council at cedarfalls.com distribution list, we could still have our individual email addresses on our contact us page. They're not. It is a link to Civic Plus web form. And it goes through the Civic Plus web form and then gets forwarded on to our private email addresses. So we're forwarding it today. So that security vulnerability that they're trying to mitigate is still being used. So it's not solving the problem. All it's doing is adding in an inability for our constituents to know what our email address is.
I mean, we could list the email addresses and still have the link. Like if I wanted
Yeah.
to email you, I could put the link. And
Right.
We could then write the email address too. I think we thought, well, why would we do that? Because maybe people don't want to get a direct email like that, you know, but you're right, we could
Sure.
still say what it is, but we would still want to use the form in terms of that's how, you know, for people to email, they can click right on the link to do the form.
So my understanding correct, the main goal is to be able to allow our residents to click email all and send us all a message and not have to individually email us.
Yeah.
So maybe I can take that as direction of work with staff to look at what are the options for all the ways that we can restore the function doing that. Without negatively impacting
Yeah.
cybersecurity, procedures, insurance, any of that.
There's a distribution list within our Exchange server today that says all CF departments, all CF council, and it includes the external email addresses in that distribution list. We just turned off the one that said council@cedarfalls.com that sends out. And yet we're still sending to those external email addresses. The last decision from council was each council person is in charge of their contact us page. So if we want to make a new decision about that direction, we can. I just wanted to make sure we understood the rationale behind it and why there was still disagreement last time. Because there's toxicity in our past. Yeah.
Pausing just because I see some faces and
It shouldn't be
thoughtful
this
faces.
Well, I think the public facing webpage has to be looked at here a little bit, trying.
So we could say. So our goal is to click the button, send an email to everyone. If that requires everyone to have a Cedar Falls email, then everyone will have a Cedar Falls email, and that's where, when you click that button, that's where that will go. You can, and if that is the requirement, then also on our pages can be whatever email address you want, like listed, written out.
It could be, and I know Kevin has advised in the past that the retention and FOIA compliance is incumbent upon each council person at that point. If they're using something else, it's simplified by using the cedarfalls.com. However, I will also throw in there, like Kelly's email address is kelly.dunn2@cedarfalls.com. Citizens don't know that. When we told them it is first.last@cedarfalls.com, it's not consistent. Where everybody on this council does now have, I know you didn't do that. It was- So everybody on the council does have a cedarfalls.com email address, and some of them have another, right? So it's simple enough to say, all right, email council. But if, let's just, pick on Daryl, if Daryl's not monitoring the cedarfalls.com address, they're gonna go unresponded to and get pissed off.
But there's
I had
also
in
some
my
ownership to that then. That's not, respectfully, it's not my fault.
Right.
It's correct. And
I don't mean that disrespectfully, but if we've got one standard
don't-
way to,
I refuse, I'm gonna say this, I'm refusing to use that because of what the public has said. And we're elected by the citizens to represent the citizens, and they don't feel comfortable using a city-sponsored email that they feel goes through the city computers and can be monitored, then I'm not gonna do it. It's just the way it is. Cyrus had the same feeling, Susan had the same feeling, they're not here right now, of course, but that's the background of this, Chris.
yeah, but then we're back to this toxicity that Ron or whoever the heck at the city wants to look at your email. No one wants to look at your email. The city, the citizens of Cedar Falls wanted a way to get told to everybody at once.
Yeah.
That is what I get.
I don't even
So
want
if
to-
you're- so if you don't want to check that email, Daryl, and then back to the original point, your contact me page is your responsibility, but there should still be a mechanism in which an entire body should be able to be
I
emailed.
understand that, and use Cruise on Council at AOL.
But that doesn't fit our insurance standard, and we need insurance.
It's fitting right now.
Well, but it's not the send an email to all.
So I think if I can jump in quick, just to try and pull together and always keep us moving is. I could take this as one, the main primary goal is to make sure people can easily message all their council members and communicate with us directly. So one, I can work with staff and look at, okay, maybe we can just ask our insurance provider, like, hey, here's the situation. Maybe general policy is don't forward internal assets external, but here's the situation. Maybe like, oh, no, that's fine. Who knows? But I can work with staff first to see, like, is it possible to be able to do a message all with an external email? If it's not, and we get that clarification clearly that that's just not even an option, then next step would be look at, okay, what would it take to have a reply all button? maybe it's saying like people can reply all, people can still message you directly, but the reply all button would go to your, and the residents who feel comfortable using that could, but it would mean you'd have to check your city one.
I started out with Daryl Cruz at Cedar Falls, then there was suddenly a Daryl Cruz #2 that I didn't create, I didn't authorize it, and nobody asked me to create it. Somehow got created. And then I've never deviated from Cruz on Council at AOL. From the very day one, I remember meeting in the city council orientation that we had, a newly elected orientation. And they asked me, well, we got a city email. I said, well, I declined it right off the bat because I feel the citizens want to email me directly. And if you want to do a group email, figure out how to bounce it from Daryl.Cruz to AOL and then it's on.
So if I can take that as the option, is I'll look into what are the options, just number one, to just see if we can make it work, even with external emails, to be able to get a message everyone button option. If that's for some reason not possible, what are the other requirements to make that? But the goal is make sure residents can message everybody simply with one step.
But. Yeah.
And I'll just bring back what,
We want to encourage them to also be able to, in confidence, email us with what could be a difficult discussion.
I don't understand how emailing, whatever email address betrays that confidence.
It's not confident, Daryl. No communication to you from an outside entity. Your role as a council person. Scout that public record as soon as that.
I understand if somebody does a FOIA request for it, yeah. But citizens have told me they don't want to have city staff looking at everything. When they gripe about the city staff, then things they feel could be sequestered. And we had a former city councilor who felt that a big block of his emails were blocked.
I don't know, we've talked about this, I'll say fairly,
Okay.
Daryl's concern was that staff, technically speaking, can access the email server and look at emails. I have never had a concern working with staff that has ever happened. But we talked about that concern and
We
I,
can talk about it some more. I
but
don't need to beat that horse right now, but
yeah.
you know my feelings.
So I will at least work with staff and just go through the work saying what the goal is, making sure everyone can message everybody directly. And for the sake of this, we'll look at that and make sure what are the
Yeah,
options and
And point's well taken, Ron. Like if it really is gonna be a cybersecurity issue, you made your point. The insurance paid for itself this year. I get it. I really do wanna eliminate that barrier. If
Oh,
there's a way
I
to
agree.
safely do it.
If we can do that.
Just for clarity here, I mean, I'm looking at an email from Kim 5 days ago that was to Ron, Danny, and City Council DL@cedarfalls.com. That's the existing distribution list. We're doing it today, having a single email that goes to all city council.
Internal,
Yeah, but it's,
internal.
but it's emailed externally.
So that means
Get-
going to.
Cruz got the email, Hannah got the email.
Yeah.
So we're doing what's a disallowed process by the insurance standard today.
I don't know that's disallowed.
must be a work phone,
That's a workaround on it.
city phone, but.
We
So
don't,
for the sake of time tonight, does that give enough
Yes.
direction to make sure we address it?
just get an email all button back.
Yeah. And then we will make sure and run it by and check with insurance, make sure whatever we do doesn't put at risk our cybersecurity.
Yes, great, thank you.
Okay, thumbs up on that? Yep, sake of effort. All right, with a shaky hand. Okay, one sec, let me write that down. So, yeah. What was that?
6-1.
Aaron says no, he's not gonna do anything. I got one in the board I can talk about, if he doesn't want to.
What time is it?
You're gonna take a 5.
5:38.
5:38, yeah, we're halfway through, so let's take, be back 5:45. We're back in session. I think, Dustin, were you pulling one?
I will. Sorry, it'll take me a second. I won't state it eloquently like Hannah did, but I'd like to look into planning toward future expansion. If warranted, I would like to see Parks and Rec division focus. And I don't think we can presume upon our current staff levels to do those needs. So from a wellness, holistic wellness perspective, both programming and green space in concert with the master plan, I'd like to look at what would it look like exploring, expanding a Parks and Rec division.
Any other clarifying questions or thumbs up, thumbs down? Thumbs up, all right, enough votes. Open the floor.
So that's really it, is the beginning of creative thinking around what would it look like if we put some flesh on those bones? How much would it cost us speculatively? Probably millions, right? So I don't want to say we have to do it, but I do want us in this next calendar year to explore what would it look like? Does that then trigger an organizational reevaluation just to make sure where we sit? If we're too lean, if we need to add staff in every division, those kinds of things might be included in that. So they're not outside the reach. But the wellness and Parks and Rec focus is where I'd like to start.
And then, Ron, I know I'd asked you this. When was the last time we did had an actual organizational review done for our structure?
Well, gosh, I could tell you the years that we actually went through, looked at it and 14 and then, did we? Yeah. Well, I can't remember the 20,
Chase says 2019.
Yeah,
James,
that's what I was gonna say, like when Mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, when Mark Hertlinger left, then we did a reorganizational change at that point.
Because I know it's something I have heard from a lot of you is just especially because I think a lot of our priorities have been around expansion of Rex programming, arts programming, culture, and a lot of those, and looking at, are we putting so much on that that's gonna become to the point where it needs to be its own department again? It used to be, I've always been form follows function type of person, so I think that with doing the strategic planning, with the Parks Master Plan and things, it'll give us a lot of future looking projections, say, okay, what are we actually wanting to do?
A good, well formatted phrase is increase staffing levels to enhance service efficiency and staff support to achieve a sustainable staffing model that allows the city to deliver exceptional customer service, expedite project timelines, and reduce strain on existing personnel.
Did AI.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks, ChatGPT.
It said something.
So I guess a couple questions here is, like you said, this is really just one as we go into the year, knowing we want to look at that and review it. Are we wanting to sign, that could require a budget? I'm guessing if we were actually asking for a formal structural analysis of the organization, or are we talking more of just hey, knowing we're looking to push on a lot of our Rex programming, arts and culture, we want to be actively reviewing what that looks like. Staff would probably be able to speak more what that process looks like, but.
Okay, so I'm for all of this, but I'm just gonna also be the person who says now, as we go into conversation, and that if we did move forward, y'all need to remember is when we ask for additional staff, when your budget comes in front of you, you're going to see that. So that, sometimes we have the conversation and we're like, yeah, hurrah. And then we get the budget and we're like, no, let's cut that. And so let's just all remember, and I think we do, but just because the work goes into it and the hopes, just to get a 1 or 1.5 or whatever staff that's, as you may recall from last year, kind of a painful calculation and process. So let's all remember that.
I think this also applies to, again, strategic planning, like what is our ultimate goal that we want the city to provide? And are we capable of providing those things at the staff level that we have? Meaning if our goal is for our community to grow, for our population to grow, for our amenities to grow, and then we say, but we don't want to spend any more money and we want to keep everything the same. Well, those don't make sense together. So I think, to Kelly's point, we are gonna have to increase our budget if we want all these things.
Become more efficient as well.
I think we're the most efficient city in the world.
That's kind of, I had on staff and I think that's that there. So
Efficiency can be measured in different ways. We overregulate on building is one. Just had a text message about that. Ways to become more efficient, and you look at communities around us that, again, I said earlier, developers migrate towards these other communities because they don't. They see obstacles in Cedar Falls to build. And,
But that's not the only thing we're growing in. It's not
that's
just
part-
like,
Building is a big part of it.
Right, but we also want more quality of life projects and we want, you know, increased green space, which requires more people to mow. Like, there's all these different things where it's like compounding. So, I mean, I think we're already in the process of evaluating our development process. We've already talked about looking at our code. So I think we check those things off on making those things more efficient if there is room for that. But
Once they check them off, but we
with.
put them in the conversation, yeah.
So is that a bigger strategic plan conversation? And
I definitely think it's part of the strategic plan. I was gonna just kind of hand it to you and ask, do you have, from the staff side, more clarifying questions on? Cause then that's a, obviously very big conversation and
yeah, that is a big conversation, you know, it's one of those incrementally, how do you do that? If you're gonna create a new rec center, a new turf center, and all of a sudden we're hiring 4 or 5 people, is that the time to do it? You know, a comment that was made last night with regard to Hearst, is, you know, we have 2 full-time Hearst staff members, we have a number of permanent part-time, but you know, as we get a new facility and you start incorporating more, you know, we'll probably be coming back to you asking for more staff and hopefully showing offsetting revenues on some of that as well. So, with just very candid, one of the things that I'll tell you that I'm very concerned about over the next few years is House File 718 and what's that gonna do for our operating budget and making sure that we can do that. You know, capital projects are one thing, raising the money, one-time monies and one-time cost to get those, but ongoing expenses is a whole different thing, so.
Fixed versus variable.
Yeah.
Well, the thing, I was gonna send it out, I didn't get to yet, I will before next, goal set. The, Farm Bureau analysis of, the farm economy through the Midwest. How that'll trickle down to budgets of many companies. Multiple billions of dollars of lost revenue. And, the gentleman that sat next to me at the CFU meeting, he said to me that he knew somebody at Deere's quite well at the upper level, and their belief is that it's far from over with the farming problem. So it's gonna trickle down to our budgets and everything around, so. And like CFU, they sell electric, so, I mean, are they immune to the farm economy? Maybe a little bit, possibly, but are we immune to the farm economy as a city?
I think I would say a couple things on this, just rhetoric from the leadership vision side. Looking at this division, I think that programming for kids parks and gardening space and things like that aren't necessarily exactly synonymous with code enforcement and planning work. So I think they're unique enough focuses that we do need a little different division there. To the point of being so lean, I see it could become problematic. I think we've had a conversation where we have director level people in the weeds doing the execution of the work. And I'd like to see a cultural shift to where the director people can encourage and build the people that do the work, so that we instill this trust and efficient work happens that way. So I do think that we'd have to grow some staff there. I know you don't need to condescend to it. I think the 1.5 positions are just different philosophical, like, things that we argued on. But Danny and I joked about this once. We said, hey, if it's a project we want, then we're gonna support it. That's kind of where I see this one, because it'll afford us the opportunity to be not so restrictively, right? We can actually open up a little bit more, so that the director people are building the people and not stuck in the trenches all the time. And I don't know how we do that with attraction. I think it's a catch-22, because that will help attract if the culture is improving in that way and you're building the people below you. It's just, to me, this is a tick in the right direction. And for the park executions that we want to have happen, whether it's a outdoor turf complex or indoor facility, I think you hire the division to execute that growth. And we're probably right there timeliness wise where we have to have it happening. It'll almost be all together, unfortunately. So that's the main reasons for me is that we can see where we're going. And so it probably is a strategic plan conversation to make sure I'm not the only one that sees it that way. And I'm okay with that if it's just included in the strategic plan, but I'd like to understand comparative metrics, what it might look like if we said we want a division of at least 5 people or whatever. As long as it makes sense to the experts as well.
Well, to put it in something we can act on, then I would say it's this group essentially giving a showing of willingness that that idea of establishing a whole new department, because that is a big undertaking. But I would say to what you said is our staff does a hell of a lot of work. Leadership is trying to manage and do a lot of the work at the same time, and credit to them, like it's a lot. So as we're looking to expand stuff, I do think we're gonna need more capacity. So I think I would take it as, because we don't know the details now on what that looks like, but it's at least a willingness from this group to see the concept of looking at an expansion of those capacities. As we do the strategic plan and map out what are the priorities gonna be,
Capacities of people or of budget or of both?
it'd be both.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's really worth reiterating, but this isn't like we're exploring uncharted territory. It would be like unto the Human and Leisure Services Division functionally, if it needs it. And that's where I think we're overburdening our excellent hardworking staff. So we want to give them a little bit more breathing room by adding to their numbers. And we heard that in the climate survey too, that we've got some concern where people want to have more support teammates.
Well, and I think, I mean, I definitely like the idea of, you know, park specific, but I also think, you know, we're talking about our development process and, you know, we, like, that is also a different section of staff. And, you know, how does our planning team interact with our engineering team? And, you know, so I think to look at that, to look at it all holistically, I think is worth our time.
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? We do a thumbs up in that general direction then?
So what is it a thumbs up to?
I'd say it's a thumbs up to knowing that from a staff perspective, as we do the strategic plan, that council's open to looking at the idea of our capacity, structure of our departments, and the potential of restructuring a new department. But so in my mind, it's if we came forward with, we're gonna need funding to look at doing this, for reviewing our department structures, the group wouldn't be surprised to see that come forward.
Yeah.
Don't know exactly what would come forward, but the group's at least
So is
willing.
that going as a priority in the plan this year?
And I think especially as the strategic plan goes through and
Correct me if I'm wrong, so it's like about a 5-year cadence for the last kind of org restructuring analyses. Would you be able to use some of that playbook to answer some of these questions? And then find out whether it makes sense to reinvigorate that department in advance of these bigger projects that we like to think are possible? Or would we be starting from the ground up with hundreds of hours of work for this analysis?
So I think the first step is really to figure out what is the council looking for as far as what's not getting done, what do you see that you want to get done, all of those type of things, and then break it down from there. I don't know, you know, if it is it solely just a rec department, and are we looking at some of those things, or are there other efficiencies that we're looking for as well? But
I also just want to point out, when we've done these restructuring, we've never hired like a consultant to come in. and
Okay,
look
so we
at
do
it.
that
It's
internal?
been internal, so I just wanted to make sure when you talked about,
okay,
Gotcha.
you know, is there some things we can go back and use? It's not like a consultant came in and we have their work product to look at. These were all just internal. What makes sense? Let's look at how many division, what's responsibilities, what's you know, how many employees does this director have, or this division, or whatever. So it's all been internal reorgs.
and sometimes when you're talking about rec, for instance, is it a new department or it is a new division alongside of rec? You know, I'm a firm believer, we're very lean at the top. You know, if you look at a lot of organizations and you look at like a pyramid type organization, so we're very lean at the top, and that's to your point, you know, our supervisory staff, our managers, our directors, they're all working directors. They don't just sit with their feet up and point. They're out there in the weeds. And so which I think helps bring some of the efficiencies. But when you look at that, you know, do you want to spend more money on director level, or would you like to spend those monies on, you know, down at that supervisory and those levels that actually get a lot of the work done as well? So
I think to me, the speculative analysis of what's missing that I'd like to have happen here is that quality of life for the employee as well. So you've got directors that are doing the work. I'd like to have them get a little bit of margin so that they can breathe a little bit and not have to do, because they've got people underneath them that are doing it. And it's a trickle down quality of life as we're trying to do that throughout the community. It's easier to retain people when they know I'm not working 80 hours a week.
okay, I'm just gonna be very candid saying that comes from this body too. That's where that trickle down does, when you keep asking.
Well, I think one of my mindsets is with that is, you know, I think we are designed for efficiency, and a lot of the reviews in the past, I think we used to be 15 departments? Back in the day,
Years ago, yep.
back in the heyday. We're at the 4 now, and, you know, efficiency is not always, efficiency can mean also effectiveness, but sometimes if you go to be too efficient, you also sacrifice effectiveness. And I do sometimes wonder, if you're 100% booked on your time, strategic development becomes very tough, because you don't have time to actually sit back, look at things, think through things, look at new opportunities. And I think that's my biggest concern, is we're so busy doing, we don't always get the chance to take a little step back, look at the other bigger opportunities. But again, that goes to, we were designed and we are incredibly efficient and lean, and we get a lot done for very little staff.
That's coming, those directives are coming from us. Like, we have to obviously take responsibility for that we're saying, and let's do this, and let's do this, and let's do this. So I think then we have to take the responsibility to say, okay, then we need to provide that space. And then what does that look like?
Right. Most employers of choice mandate margin time for pet projects and such to enhance morale. That comes from decision makers like us. So that's kind of what I'm saying is, I'd be okay with a little extra spend to get that culture.
Yeah, we do mandate time for pet projects. It's our pet projects.
Well, okay.
Staff's not laughing at that.
I don't like unfunded mandates, so I want to stop sending unfunded mandates to staff. Probably gives you just enough clarity to be in the mud.
Confused.
Yeah, totally.
So I think I heard those two things. You would like though to see what the cost is of creating another department, having people in. I think I heard that, but then it's also part of the strategic plan. So that would.
I would like to look at the division under an existing department.
Because there could be some realigning
Yeah.
in all of the departments to accommodate that, yeah.
So to me.
Because that would relieve it should
Yeah.
relieve the director's 80-hour week or whatever it is to have, all right, now I have 4 these other resources to do
Right.
this work.
So Jen, to clarify, I'm less focused on making a department just to make a department and more focused on adding in the focus. So if that can align with our current and even restructure a few other things, I'm wanting a recommendation. And I'm not opposed to an external consultancy. It's just those are way more costly.
I think that's something that we can come back with.
I like the way you just put that, that's what, because I really want to know, I want to know what the people who do the job, like, if you're gonna get more relief from folks somewhere else than at the top, like, I want to know what's gonna be best for our spend.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. What's next?
I have a project that's, we've been talking about this for a while, but it's this alleyway paving. Chase could probably answer this really quick. Fairly hard, we'll get to it in the next 15 minutes. Perfect.
Well, not the actual.
Yeah, actually, if that is what you're gonna bring up, we've got that in the,
Okay.
I'd like to talk about a splash
Actually,
pad.
kind of note here that says Daryl's
Jason's been waiting all night.
alley,
2026.
Splash pad.
You're not yourself when you're hungry.
Splash pad.
No, you're the same.
Splash pad?
Splash pad.
You just wanna throw that one out there?
I just think, I mean, we know that
we know that the Parks Survey is gonna say splash pad. People have been screaming splash pad at us for years. So I think we should chuck in some money for a splash pad. Let's go. Let's splash.
Do you guys, just for a second, a little quick one, does everyone want to talk about splash pad?
So it was already part of the original plan for with the river, right? And that was where it was designed to go. So it's just overcoming obstacles there. It would get out our resources.
The obstacle was money.
Yeah.
Do you know what, well,
Yeah.
do you know, or Jen, excuse me, Stephanie, do you know what the estimated cost was? It's a very aggressive plan.
Yeah.
Of,
For it being in any original construction plans, maybe it was an idea that was out there of something that should
It
be
was-
part of that project, but I don't remember it being in our construction.
It was in the
I thought I
conceptual.
saw it in the drawing of
Yeah.
it was in the
so it
concept.
wasn't in the engineered documents ever for the
No, I
cost
think
estimate?
That was just trash.
You know, is that going back to like 14 or something? Cause that was not in the master.
Not that far back, but it did get removed before it was bid the first time.
You talking about the turtle?
So we don't really have cost
No,
estimates on it.
well, we had some estimates from the designer, but we were already over what the budget was at that particular time, so it got removed.
Do you know general estimate on one splash pad? I mean, obviously it depends on
Not
design.
10,000.
Chase is dying.
A
to
lot of the
jump
smaller
on.
communities that down around us, you can spend what you want, but probably between 200,000 and 300,000.
Oh, way less than 910,000.
No, it's
But it's not a huge footprint. I mean, it's not the size of this room. It's right.
Yeah.
out there.
Little
But
splasher.
as an amenity, I think, you know, it would be cool. I'm not married to a specific location. I think Gateway makes sense because those that are in the river water, families may come with them. It's a great place if we want to attract something over there, or we could have it in another location. I just don't know where it would be just yet, but that idea of having multiple destinations in town
Yeah.
is something I'd like us to do a little bit better, focus,
Well,
if it has to be.
to piggyback off my own piggyback. I also think that we need to think more of the river as an amenity. And which obviously that is included in your plans with the Iowa State group. But I also don't think we have to say we can only have one splash pad. We could have 2 splash pads. So, you know, maybe we put the funding in for the splash pad and then we see what the park survey says. If a bunch of people are like, we want a splash pad by Chris's house, perfect.
Great.
Yard.
You know, I think we just put the funding in and then we figure out the details later.
Right in the middle of it.
Not interrupted.
Ron, that little like, cause I feel like that, I remember that little conceptual, whatever. Didn't it also, it wasn't just like the splash pad, like your standard splash pad, wasn't it kind of artsy fartsy around it, that might cost a little money?
Yeah, it was gonna
Kind of
blend,
tied
it
into
was
the-
gonna blend in with
Yeah.
the,
Yeah,
So I just like,
yes.
I'd like it if it
So 300,
blends.
blends.
300. 500, Dustin said 500.
But it
so.
has to include an all-wood structure playground for outside the water zone.
For splinters, so
I
these
did really
splash.
love the. Look
Bring
nice
it
in
back,
that.
baby,
And then you can go
Splash
skate
splinter.
every year.
every year. So the Kiwanis, we can get the Kiwanis going.
Nobody's.
So to be serious for one second, just,
I am serious.
do
We're all
Okay.
serious.
Yeah.
we want to look at giving direction then? Hold on, we got some side conversations, so.
Yes, we want to look at giving direction.
So are we wanting to
Send
kind
out
of give a
RFP.
ballpark, or are we wanting to say, staff, do you just want to give the direction of generally look at budgeting for the idea of a splash pad? Do we want to say 500,000? Do we want
But
That's what I should, what if we lump it in together with the TBD dollars for park master plan suggestions? And set a cap for all of that, from which maybe a splash pad could come in 26
could we say 500,000
to come for.
for all of those things?
Yeah, it affords us the ability to be nimble with Central Park and Splash Pad and gives us somewhere to talk about and see how bad it affects budget.
if you're talking overall budget, I'd say 500 is probably a little low, just because the splash pad itself on the cheap end might be 300 to 400, so you're
coming year.
taking up
Oh, you
pretty
mean
much
like-
everything with just the splash pad, so you haven't really set a You've left like 100 to 200
Well,
for everything else.
Ron's already having palpitations, talking about adding in 500,000 to play this year.
Ron
Well,
loves-
we'll get to that, but you know, like, what was the dollar figure you had, Jen, for every million that we had?
2,000 each year that adds for debt service for every extra.
10%.
Let's not jump into that yet, because I don't want everyone to start thinking numbers yet.
So,
It's just the how.
okay, so how about 7?
7? Or you want to say 1 million?
Don't, I'm asking
Well,
you
if you
guys.
keep expanding amenities around the splash pad, yeah, we can run up the bill.
Well, I think what they're saying is projects that come out of the parks master plan. So one of those projects would be a splash pad. And then maybe like adding some like accessible play equipment to a different park and paving this part of a trail and
Wouldn't the parks plan talk about a menu of things and the costs for each thing?
Well, so we're kind of preemptively trying to say, because we're setting next July's budget to, and the plan will finish up in that period. So if we don't kind of put some money in there now, we won't have anything available.
For another year.
So it's kind of chicken and the egg. We don't know what we need yet. But
This is
just
setting a
trying to,
feeling of 7.
So we have no funding for the results of the park study?
unless we put something in the budget.
And
Well,
in
then you're
future
talking,
budget.
how many parks are you dealing with, and 8 acres of parks?
Right, so in 27, we could add in another, 28, we could add in another.
Right.
But
Yeah, so just for this next fiscal year.
So the deliverables on the Parks Master Plan will be, you know, hey, here's a number of things that we think you need to update within your parks. Add, subtract, whatever those things are, and here's associated costs, and then here's a schedule. So this Parks Master Plan could be a 15-year plan.
Will include professional ball diamonds or whatever, sanctioned ball
Yep.
diamonds and so on.
Potentially all of those things.
Yeah, well, hopefully it looks like that.
So
1
we're not,
million,
What's that?
Hopefully it looks like
including a
that.
splash pad.
I think it's still
That's their directive for the
right cost of that. But
And obviously, we're gonna bring this all back, and if we bring it back and we say like, well, to do all this, we're raising taxes out of 10%, and then everyone's like, no, we're not doing that, then we can.
just
Slash
thinking of
that.
time here, let's say we set 500 grand into 25 or any and all from the park master plan, possibly even including, 26, sorry, thank you, Ron. And the parks master plan does indeed say we want a splash pad. Well, we have to go out to bid for design firms. Then we have to go out and bid for the construction, all of that. It's not likely gonna happen in July. But it gives us the opportunity to go get some contracts or design bids from some different firms. We don't have to put the full million, because we're not actually gonna get it built in August of 26 or 25.
Unless we force staff to build it.
Well, I don't think they have the capacity. So 500,000 is a number I'm comfortable with for a bucket of
Water.
immediately plausible fixes. That seems big from the parks master plan.
500,000?
Does that seem like a good number?
Five.
I'm looking to Jen and Ron. Does that seem like a good
Well,
number?
one of the things I
to
think
do
we talked
anything
about
helpful?
is, if you look at your CIP number 69, staff, this is what staff is really trying to kind of put in as a earmark for some things out of the park.
Okay.
And you'll see there's not a lot in 26, because I think Zach, to your point, Dustin, I don't know that we thought we were gonna get to much in six, you know, by the time we finish the plan, all that stuff you just.
Sure.
So, now, so that's why you'll only see 150,000 in 26, 150,000 in 27, but then you'll see, we tried to add some dollars in 28, 29, and 30. When we get to gaming, we've heard that maybe they'd like to fund park projects, so we're like, okay, should we be putting some gaming dollars in there? But I think what I'm hearing tonight is maybe some direction that you'd like to see those lines higher than what we have in there right now, this draft CIP. I think is the direction we're getting, is to try to bump that up to whatever that is, whether it's, I don't know if I heard 500,000 a year, or did you mean 500,000 in
We're
26?
just talking for next
Just for
fiscal
next
year.
year.
As a ceiling of a placeholder.
Sure.
Yeah, but I understand the point of it might be a couple years before we get action on that. I don't want it to delay any further. So if we're expecting an action plan from the parks master plan, and we could take some action for 50 grand at this park and 12 grand at that park and 100 grand at that park, I want some dollars set aside for it. 500 should cover it
and just for 26%.
Yeah.
But we probably still wanna keep some dollars in those future years,
Mhm.
because,
Yeah.
we know we're not gonna do every
Yeah.
thing.
Presumably it's gonna give us a whole bunch.
And it helps get the vision potentially off the ground before that.
All right, so just pull back the other 500,000. It's kind of a direction
Yep.
for,
Including flat.
Yep.
Thank you. I'll print that off.
all right.
You know,
So they're
the dreaming
individual.
things.
And obviously, we still got the goal document, which a lot of things are still in there too, so. Any other individual?
Well, let's.
Oh, we are gonna keep, yeah, we're definitely gonna keep. But are there any other individual priorities before we jump into the,
I'll jump
Goal
into my
document.
one last soapbox if I haven't overstepped anybody else. Okay, I would still like us to do an external audit and recommendation for our public safety services, including CIT potential for crisis intervention for mental and medical crises, to see if we have what we need to respond to those incidents where somebody's having a less police required and more community services required type of interaction. And also that soapbox aspect of it is, I want an external comparative audit just to say, okay, we're delivering on those promises from our intended plan. It's kind of back to that. We knew where we were going. And now I want to make sure that we got where we were intending to with our current offering of public safety. So it's a both and the last time I looked at the funding, it was less than 60 grand. I want to say it was 35 to 55 was the range. We asked for about 125 grand 3 years ago and decided to table it in lieu of an internal review, which reported wonderful on our policing and our fire prevention and safety. I want to see what an external recommendation might do to help us develop a CIT team in our metro area potentially, or at least in Cedar Falls.
Why do you need external for that? I mean, the literature on that is, what's a big one, sheriff's department.
We have CIT through Elevate.
Yeah,
Right.
So Waterloo, they did a contract just for Waterloo, and then we use Elevate throughout the county.
Does that, I mean, we don't have any ride-along personnel with that team. That's an on-call.
No, and Waterloo did that for a while. Waterloo stopped doing that too. They actually have the first time moved out.
Did they? Okay.
So we do it on call because if you have riding along, what car you can put them in.
Yeah.
How many hours they're gonna ride to go to the countywide, absolutely agree. It makes sense if we have a countywide mental health, which is what we're doing. If it's more robust, that would make sense.
I think my sense on it, my sentiment is we need to be setting the bar and leading that charge. It's already a known problem in the county. And if we just continue doing what the county's doing, which has gotten us these warning alerts, then let's step it up. So the external reason would be, Aaron, because we know what we know. An external would give us a diversity of perspective to say, hey, you didn't notice this, and you should consider it.
and just quick clarify, when you're talking the external, because you kind of mentioned the two things, the CIT and the external review.
Yeah, an audit and recommendation on our public safety services.
so not just CIT, but the.
Right.
So to me, they're kind of two different things, because I'm never gonna shy away from the mental health thing. I'm not for the giving dollars to a third party, review of our public safety. But I am, and I don't know that I'm like exactly where Dustin is, but I am definitely always want to put the support to our professional staff and I guess just to make sure it's said over and over that anything, and I think like, because did you go to that thing down at the League of Cities that one time?
Yeah.
And they were talking, they have more of like around Des Moines where they've got officers who are full-time, they are part of their department, and it's a different thing because they are always there. And I think their point is sometimes when there's a crisis happening, instead of waiting for somebody to respond, they're there at the beginning, and it frees up other people. But it costs more money. So, and I think I talked with Craig about that, or Mark, when we got back. It's a great thing. I know it costs money, and I know, but it also, the county, one time I think I met with one of our supervisors, and if there was a way we could partner with the county, so we could somehow make everything. So I guess what I'm rambling on about is I'm not for the third party audit thing, but I definitely am always backing whatever staff, or, you know, if the mayor was ever to meet with the county, supervisors or anything, like, any way we can be better with the support or the response to mental health for the good of our citizens and the good of our staff, mainly public safety staff, I'm always gonna, like, interested in that. So anyway. I'm probably gonna give a thumbs down to this proposal, but I just want to get that little clear.
So might do just two quick votes quick. So maybe first, just the CIT discussion and wanting to go further in discussion that we'll look into what we're offering for,
Or,
yeah.
Craig, what percentage of your officers are CIT trained now?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. And
So
they,
everybody's went through CI, they have to go through at the academy now, but then we have people went through a 3-day and a
Right.
week.
right, so that,
Yeah. And actually, when I say our staff, it's police and fire.
right,
So that in the metro area, the other agencies still haven't done all their fire and paramedics. So we've got everybody done.
and that's akin to that program out of Texas that they're county one, correct?
And we train with Waterloo County. It's a countywide effort every time they go through the training.
So 100% of our officers are trained in it, they get it in the academy. And then there's an expectation upon hire after a certain amount of time they have that training, correct?
Well, they actually get in the police
Get
academy.
it in the academy, so we don't have to supplement that.
No, and we still do, there's an ongoing requirement through ILEA now that you do online training each year. And we had CIT, I was one of the first, 4 of us went through it, actually in 1997. After a week-long CIT training, so Cedar Falls has probably been doing CIT longer than anybody else in the county. But we do have our entire staff trained, everybody signed a police and fire.
And Waterloo went away from having a clinician from Elevate right along, correct?
Their contract ended, so now they have, Elevate has at least one.
Yeah.
And he responds in a car.
Right.
And they respond and help, but we love Elevate, we work with them all the time, they're phenomenal, but we do have, in the last 10, 15 years, as Chris will tell you, we probably have 3 to 4 times as many mental health calls a week.
Oh, really?
So,
so it'd be fair to say that the question is, so it sounds like you've given us the baseline, what we currently offer. It's, do we want to discuss additional focus and priority toward more CIT expertise?
The audit in my mind, I'll read what I.
So separating the audit and the CIT, but I know they're kind of interlinked, but.
So, we are doing a CIT offering. So to me, I said, one, we've still never done any external double check after we switched over to the combined public safety services, and we need to address crisis intervention in mental and medical crisis alike. If what I'm hearing is we have this, the concern I still have is Blackhawk County is rated among the worst places for mental health. And so if we keep looking at our own problems from our own vantage point, we're gonna keep getting the same results. So if we
That's
go,
different than CIT though. That's the crisis intervention to de-escalate on the scene. What you're talking about is a known problem, and certainly Chris knows this, is.
yeah, there's no beds, and I know, yep.
Yeah, where do you go after the jail or after the de-escalation? And this, but the CIT review of public safety is not gonna answer that question.
So is the push that we'd add an adding FTEs to having clinicians riding along? I'm trying to understand
It's not the push. The push is have an external entity assess, because that's what people demanded in my area, that we're delivering on what we said we were delivering on, and there's a need for mental health intervention. So I may be missing or mixing the semantics there, but that's the push, is to have an external entity that says, yes, you guys are setting the bar, you're level best. And so now others might want to look at that as a model, or actually, no, you have a couple of gaps that you guys didn't notice, and we pointed them out, and now we can do something about it. We don't want to keep looking at the same problem, doing the same exact thing, expecting improvement. And I've seen in our climate responses in the last 2 biannual climates that we've had, that, hey, there's still some room to grow there. So let's look for additional resources to say, you guys are doing great. Here's where you can shore up.
And on that piece in the audit, you're talking holistically, not just your mental health service, CIT, you're talking.
Public safety service.
Yep.
So in theory, you could say, we want to focus on CIT, let's put an effort towards that. But you're saying, let's do an audit, and if it says anything about CIT, let's have funding in there for that specifically.
I suppose I could go with that. The CIT was more of an add-on, as that is an issue now. The public safety services verification, if we'll call it that, is an election issue for me from 3 years ago. That's why I keep advocating for it.
So,
I never came on board to dismantle anything. I came in to say, I'm gonna get you an outside assessment, so you know you can trust what we got. We haven't done it yet.
Can I just say one more thing, just real quick? Okay, like, I see as, like, listening to our public safety director and knowing that we have a very involved mayor now. I would hope that, even though we're doing things and if we've got these things in place, I would assume Craig and any of us, if we can do better, if there's room to do better, with partnership somewhere, or like, when we talk about, where do people go? Like, yes, mental health is broken. But it's not just because the city is Cedar Falls, but where do people go after jail? I mean, if there was ever a way we could partner or advocate or fund, and maybe we already are, and I'm just not remembering, but like the crisis center in Waterloo where people can go. I mean, there is not places where there are not places where people could go, but that's a much bigger issue. So I don't want it to, like, I hear what Dustin's saying as far as that. But to me, those conversations maybe start, and then I don't even think we know where we're going yet. And I understand the review. So I just, again, okay, I'll shut up now.
and if I can just give my piece to review part is, two things. One is having been involved in speaking as someone that's working closely with staff, and I think the program's working great. Like anything, there's always room to improve. There is definitely, I think, a case to be made and value on for a lot of people that because of the way all the politics that got involved in the process, people just want to see, like what I heard when I was door knocking is people just want to know the data shows it's working. And I think it is. Again, though, people always question, okay, who can I trust their opinion, depending on who was involved in the process. So, and I've talked with Ron on this, and no, first of all, if you do a study, it's always going to point out, probably, especially with public safety programs. I'm not saying this is a reason to not do it, but I agree when Ron mentions this, that he'll probably come back and say, we need more staff. Because we are very lean staff, and there's always a case to be made for that. But I think part of the discussion is there value to reviewing a program, because it was a new program. We were testing a model that's not all that well tested in the area. I think the program's working, so I'm not at all questioning that. And Ron has said 1,000 times over, and Craig too, that more than willing to put it in front of public eye, let it be reviewed and see if the program's working, review all the data. I think it's one, we don't want to make it seem like to our staff that we're questioning their abilities. So the way that conversation happens is very important, because from my standpoint, I want to make sure staff knows I'm not at all questioning their abilities. But there is definitely a public opinion piece of people are asking or just wanting to feel confident in the program. So it's something I've talked with Ron on, I've talked with Craig on, like, what does a review look like? What's that entail? And gone back and forth on. And so I don't think Dustin's coming from a nefarious place. I think you do hear it from people when you door knock, just because of all the politics that were involved in that. People ask the question, like, I just want to feel like it's working. And I don't know the right answer. Does a review solve that? Doesn't it solve it? So I just want to say that's kind of my thoughts on it and where I see you coming from, Dustin.
Can I don't disagree with what you just said, Danny. I think an ongoing review of any program is never a bad thing, right? It's never a bad thing. However, I also think, and I'm not saying you're doing this, Dustin, but I think this does get politicized, and the only program I ever hear about within our city that should be ongoingly scrutinized or reviewed is public safety. So if we're gonna start with public safety, so be it. But then I don't think any other area should be out of bounds in that. And I think it's unfortunate though, because I think the perception from our public safety folks that are doing the job is it's us, it's us,
Well,
it's us.
I get that, and the finance department gets audited constantly, externally, by ordinance, required. It's not a threat, you're exactly right, there's nothing nefarious behind it. And I would go so far politically to say, if there is a sentiment of, they don't think I'm doing my job right, whose messaging is that? It's not our messaging. The citizens have been asking, we want to know this, we'll shut up if we get this, and somebody else from the outside says, you're doing great. And yet we haven't done it. We fought against it for years now. Let's just get it. I can't tell that they will, but they've said they will. So it helps with the public opinion. And I think our men and women in blue and red, whatever they, black, I think they wear, they'll know that we're supporting them. You see the responses that we're being more engaged this last year than we were before. This is to listen to what they've said. Hey, if they're understaffed, shame on us for not getting that through to more staffing positions. We're sitting here being afraid of an external audit because they might tell us we need 3 more people. Then we should have 3 more people. If
I
that,
don't think that's why people are asking for an audit. though.
I know.
It's still people that are looking for an axe to grind because of the
That may be-
separation.
that makes
So
sense.
you can wash it like you want. I had the same, discussions during my campaign. We campaigned at the same time. And I had it on, on my campaign. And what I learned is there's misinformation and misunderstanding. There are still citizens out there that don't think we have a fire department. Don't think we have a fire truck or firefighters. That's the misconception of this whole thing. And it is, we cannot go back in time and change how it went down. Because it was poor.
You know, I guess, just by way of an example, I mean, another highly politicized thing was roundabouts at the time. In fact, Ray got
Right.
had some nice t-shirts about that. right?
Yeah,
Now, think about that. I have not heard, quite to the contrary, anything but that those roundabouts, other than the normal gripes, work great, okay? And, the traffic moves smoother. I think accidents are down. I understand that the plow drivers like it because they don't have to back up into traffic when they're doing the plows. So do we do an audit of that? And the answer is no, because there's really no significant evidence that we're having difficulty with the roundabouts. So in the absence of significant evidence that we're having difficulty with our public safety model, then the only answer that I can come up is we're throwing money at something to appease
yeah.
people who are looking for a problem. If the evidence comes forward and says, we got an issue, response times are down, that, crime's running rampant in Cedar Falls and we're not able to respond to it internally, then I can understand a need for an external audit. But before we throw money at it, and I understand why we're doing a parks master plan, because we know that the parks need revamped. So you start with that premise that the parks need revamped. Let's throw money at a plan to do better. I don't hear a premise that we're having difficulty with this model. And so I would be above that.
Can always continue to educate. That was part of my education was once I learned how the system and the program actually works. It is effective, it's, efficient, we have skilled, and you can't, if you go by criteria, God forbid that any fire causes a fatality, but if you're gonna throw a program out, I think Waterloo's had 4 fire fatalities this past year. And they're
They're a phenomenal department.
they're a phenomenal department.
And you
Unfortunately,
can't measure a department.
you can't
on
measure it
fatalities.
by that.
You just can't.
And that's what people are waiting for the other shoe to drop. If a major fire would happen and say, see, I told you,
Right, and that one, I agree, it's like, are we just, people are saying, well, is it working? Well, we have data to show that it's working. We can tell you how highly educated our staff is, how much training they have, all of the different programs that we offer, the time spent in schools, like, there's a bazillion things that it's like, our public safety program is killing it. I mean, Ron just mentioned at that CFU meeting that people are probably gonna start reaching out up to us because they're gonna have to cut their funding for their own public safety and wanna try our model. So I completely understand what you're saying. I would hope that a lot of those people that express those concerns when you guys are door knocking could get some of that information and say, oh, wow, yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And then if we have issues, then we do that review. But right now, it's like, we're doing a great job. So it's like, we're just reviewing for the sake of getting a few people to be like, oh, I guess it is working.
and it's maturing
Right.
as it continues to.
One of the things that we continue to try to get people in the public safety building to educate them as much as we can. But Director Birdie and the 2 chiefs have now talked about doing a police and fire academy for adults to come in and 1 day a week for 6 weeks, was it?
We're gonna start this spring with some police and fire academy.
And so to help, again, educate folks to get in there, see what their tax dollars are paying for, see how it actually functions. So,
You train some snow buddies at the same.
Yeah.
Stephanie, get a charge of that.
Do they get a shirt?
We've already
They should
got the
be in.
daycare.
Yeah. One stop shop.
Remember, Aaron doesn't wear the shirts, you get them.
Yeah, so don't waste your time on air.
Yeah, don't waste your time out here.
All right, so any other discussion on this? So, I mean, we kind of already had a discussion.
So are we gonna separate it out?
The overall study or the CIT piece, or are they two separate pieces? I just wanna make sure. I'm
They're
understanding.
one and the same, because an external entity would say, here's what you guys, we would recommend for you guys to entertain. And if that includes, hey, you should have some CIT trained full-time officer assets, then we investigate that.
How much are you talking this would cost?
I would have assumed it'd be pretty close to what the initials were, the initial bids were, and I heard from 35 to 55 was a verbal quote from my own investigation 2 years ago. So you're probably talking 75 max.
All right, so I think the vote is the whole piece together. And we already had the conversation, it's more about the direction. So yes or no on having us move forward with looking at that.
I would, if we separate them, I'd be up for it, but if together,
Yeah, it's interesting, because I would say, and I'm never gonna be saying, we should not add more services for mental health.
Yeah.
Well, my job is, right? But I do
Or
think,
my job.
or your job, but I really do think Waterloo, Cedar Falls, and this agreement they have with Elevate and the county and everything, I really do think we set the bar pretty high. And there's always room for improvement, and I'd love nothing more than to have full-time dedicated CIT people that can ride along with our officers, because it would save them a hell of a lot of time and angst.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, there's a reason why every single service agency and provider in the state of Iowa is recruiting from the same pool of very, very little. So I don't think, even if we said we wanted to make it a goal that we were gonna hire 24/7, so 4.2 FTEs worth of full-time CIT officers, you'd ever fill it.
Yeah.
I really don't. That's just the sad reality. So,
Okay. That doesn't pass. Any other,
Current status of working with the county on the,
EMA?
yeah,
Dum, dum, dum.
I can.
We've
Um,
only got 20 minutes left.
only got 20 minutes. I was trying to decide whether we cover, because that is an item kind of in the goal setting doc, sort of.
so sorry.
Do it then.
Yeah, it's fine.
Actually, I think, did someone mark that item specifically in the goal setting doc to talk about? I think someone pulled the EMA.
I can't remember, man.
I don't know if we really did, so I'll just cover it really quick. So we did, as the EMA commission, voted unanimously to move forward with requesting the county to switch the whole thing to a county levy. Essentially, they gave me permission to move forward with trying to talk with the supervisors on that. Obviously, no point to talk to them in these couple weeks before the holidays. With the new group coming on, I've already met with one of the new supervisors, talked to him, really good person. Seemed very level-headed, didn't just say, yes, I'll support it, seems to make sense. Love to learn more when I get in, and so Ron did get, or excuse me, Kevin. Ron did not do it, Kevin did it. Mr. Rogers, over there in the corner.
Ron recommended you talk to Kevin.
Ron recommended I talk to Kevin. Did get us the Attorney General, like it was pretty clear, the Attorney General back in 2021 explicitly said the way that the law is written, the EMA county board has the authority to set both what the mix of funding is, like how we're billed, as well as where that funding comes from. So we have the authority to tell the county, this is now a county levy, you will go levy it. And it explicitly says the county cannot oppose that. They have to do it.
sweet.
So we're gonna start, I'm meeting with Deanne Kobliska, Mayor of Evansdale. She's the chair of the group. We're gonna get together and just talk about how we want to approach. We don't just want to walk in and say like, well, this says you have to do it, so.
When you're,
No, I heard.
I did not win the
You actually. won.
Cedar Falls took second in the bell ring.
saw a nice picture.
I lost by $700. Nice job.
No,
Yeah.
we raised it by like 50-60%.
next year we'll all be participating.
Yeah, so next year we will all be caroling
I'm gonna bring
at the
Carrie.
Salvation Army. Correct? So I would say for tonight, we've got 15 minutes left till 7. The next step, was there any other individual?
Could I maybe give a little
No.
bit more hit?
15 minutes.
I'm fine.
Go for it.
So, just a little bit more history with regard to, the levy stuff. It wasn't this last legislative session, it was a legislative session before, but they introduced 2 legislative to change that law that Danny had, mentioned, that would say, hey, you know what? It's going to have to go through the county's gonna have to approve it, or to strengthen the law to say, no, and both failed. So it was kind of interesting. So right now, not the lawyer, but it sounds like the Attorney General's opinion and stands.
And I was gonna ask, I emailed this to you, but it's right before this. Is that the most recent opinion? So that's current?
The only way that would change is if there's court cases going all the way up, there hasn't been, or they since changed the legislation, as Ron mentioned. So
And
now, Attorney General opinion, or knows this, is persuasive, but not binding on anything.
yeah. And so essentially, so everyone understands, if we got that switched over, that takes it out of our general fund, helps us with our levy rate, keeps taxpayer taxes are the same. One thing, this I might ask everyone for thumbs up on this or thumbs down, is something we could offer to the county supervisors to help more, because their concern is we shift it to the county. Now it looks like they raise taxes and it looks like we lower taxes. They're concerned some of the cities will then use that. I know, right?
Great.
They're concerned some of the cities will then raise their taxes by that equivalent amount and make it look like they didn't raise taxes, but they were able to raise their taxes. Because most residents are never gonna understand and look at how that actually happened.
Used not to make progress. So maybe you should just say that.
So one thing I thought about offering is, we'll allocate a little bit of money to help do some, I don't know if it's ads, mailers, to just explain to residents, hey, there's a change happening at the county, or that's the way we do this, just to help show it shifts.
Yeah, let's not put money on it, yeah.
But
So did the EMA vote to have the tax go to the county 2 years ago?
So
Officially?
what the EMA voted on is to change the way they allocated the cost. And what they went to is basically a property value.
Right. But they did not vote to move it to the supervisors.
So in the conversation at that time was, okay, this will be a transitional step. And so we'll do that, do the property tax, and then in a subsequent year, we'll move it to here.
and that's part of our argument for why they should do this is,
And it was,
because the only way to do it as a county tax is to have it be property tax, property value based, because that's the only way, that's how county taxes work. So by moving it to that, it opens up the option of doing it as a county levy. They just didn't have the wherewithal to push that at that time. So that's part of the argument is, if we're gonna be stuck with a larger bill, then let's at least do this, so it helps everybody out.
and is that dispatch amount in the 810 levy?
Yes.
It's not a separate thing that we could stick on outside the 810, right?
Wait a minute, EMA
No,
levy.
it's a.
EMA levy.
It's separate.
It just it opens up some of our budget constraints.
But just to clarify that, does it count against our 810 max levy?
It's a separate budget. I think what the concern is, though, is again, House File 718, is I think the worry is always what's the next.
Does the EMA get forced under the 810 in coming years? And the only reason I asked is that if we did indeed, the EMA voted that the county should cover it, well, then we sue them for back payments for the last 2 years.
You can always do the question is, can you win?
Yeah, yep, can you win?
Ron, when it went through legislative process, did it get out of a chamber or a subcommittee, do you know?
I don't remember, Carol.
I believe it died in subcommittee, if memory serves. Also, just worth noting that the county budget went up like 150% that same year that it moved to valuation base. So not only was it an extra 800 grand on us, it was a big chunk of that was because their operating expenses have gotten higher. So they probably want to dodge it because it's going to keep going up on their tax roll.
Mhm.
So appreciate that you're fighting that.
The only thing I would add too, kind of related to it, the county under Chief Fitzgerald thought they should do a dispatch study. They hired an outside consultant Consultant said you need to increase staff by 50%, and they are moving out on that, adding staff at the dispatch center because that's what their hired consultant told them to do.
The one they.
They're doing it slow, but they're adding 2-3 positions a year, and something that we used to always pay like 250,000-300,000 a year for, I think we're at 1.2 million.
1.2 million.
And we hovered around 200,000-300,000 for a long time, and we could have never run a dispatch center for that. So it was a bargain, and the dispatch center makes sense. But now we pay for 40% of it, we use 19% of it.
Right.
I was gonna say, we went to the 50-50, where Cedar Falls paid 50% and the rest of the county paid 50%,
Yeah,
but
well, we're
pretty
We're
close.
39%, Waterloo is like 41%, and then everybody else makes up the ash and trash between some of the smaller towns.
So the idea of bringing it in-house is no longer viable.
Not a-
It never really works.
The problem with bringing it in-house is if you bring it in-house and then the county goes to the full county thing, now all of a sudden Cedar Falls residents are paying double.
Or you've wasted million.
Yeah.
Million. On all the equipment, trucks.
Since we do have a little bit of time left, Ron, do we just want to go to the updates and kind of run through?
Do
Some of
whatever you
our
want, man.
updates and-
Your show.
Let's just go ahead and do some of those, kind of knock them out, because those should be pretty quick to run through.
Give it an update, so.
Yeah,
Is there a section on updates?
yes, in the slides, starts on. Was that?
84.
We'll kind of do that whole thing. Kate, you're okay with delaying your, doing your stuff next week?
We have a sweet ride this year.
Yeah. Tyler's here, going to talk about waste off.
Oh,
Come on.
it's crappy, but you know.
Yeah, Tyler's had to be here the whole time. Let's let him talk.
I'm good with that too, if you think.
I always got a
Tyler, think
basketball
we've
game
got
to
time
get
with
to.
Like 10, 20 minutes.
I'm just gonna go. Do another story.
Yeah.
Sure.
You don't want to
You
do
got
it.
another
in this weather.
beer stuck in the
But
ring?
Clearly, you don't do it to her in this weather.
All right, Chase, you think, can we do the wastewater update piece and?
Yeah, it's pretty quick. It's at the end of the infrastructure slide. They're on it. Keep going forward.
Yeah, which, give me a number, where are we at? Transfer
79, definitely.
79.
Great class this.
Slide 79, Daryl.
Okay, slide 79.
So really what we have before you here is just as the title says, an update CIP item number 204, nutrient reduction. So as you can see where we have on the left-hand side, some check marks where we are in the process. Final report's been submitted to the DNR. Facility planning is hoping to get done in 2025. We'll be bringing forward a design contract this summer, which is estimated to be about $11 million. One of the strategies that we're actually looking at doing to fund that is for at least a portion of it, working with the state revolving fund, because that's a 0% interest on design. So we'd be looking at funding some of that with the design contract there. Again, design begins in 2026. Chase and Tyler were running around the Midwest the last couple of weeks, looking at some of the different technologies that are out there and going to different cities and looking at relatively new plants, wouldn't you say, Chase? They're not real old, but their upgrades are up and running, and looking at those technologies and how they would work and what they would look at for staffing and operators. We have a number of operators. You or Tyler might want to run, what do we have, 2 4s, operator 4s, which is the highest that you can have.
Yeah, in admin, we're both operator board licensed. Then we have 4 treatment plant operators. One's a grade 3, 2 grade 2s, and a grade 1.
So as we move forward, we may be required to up that depending on what, up the requirements of what the operators are. We may be, right now, we're 6 day. That's what we have, operators in 6 days a week. We have all 7. So some, you may be required to have all 7 as well, on some of the other plants. So
So I can use the restroom on Sundays now?
Hold off a little bit, hold.
All 7 days.
You can still go behind the garage.
No, you're good with number one.
Not just number one
Number
on
two.
Sundays.
Chase told him last year not to use it on Sundays and he hasn't since.
Behind the shed.
Yeah.
Gil,
That unused garage on my pump station.
So,
Keep your feet down.
so again, looking at construction, overall, cost of that's, about 140 million. And so this is really,
it's a lot of splash pads for $140 million.
I think we can incorporate the two.
Yeah, we could do.
Right, another circle,
Just yet.
another circle on there,
Instead of demoing all those.
That's
you could throw-
but they'll aesthetically
Yeah.
flow with.
Got a dozen splash
We can
pads.
set them over to lay on the dirt pile, it's not a dirt pile.
Justin,
it's
you don't
tomato
want to
farm.
speak at the
Tomato
end.
Oh.
You
You could
forget it.
forget it.
gotta get in
that's why we
early.
usually limit these to 3 hours. So that's, we just had the one slide. It was really an update on where we're at. We will be, back in front of you, in 2025, probably a couple times looking at, proposing what some of the technologies will be and then looking at moving forward with the design contract. Anything to add, Chase?
What are our marketing efforts involving an RV and a Fargo hat? Nothing yet?
Not yet.
Okay,
That's actually such a good idea.
Yeah,
saying, hey,
I think,
Cedar Falls crapper's full.
yeah,
What
yeah.
are you gonna do?
wow.
Who ended up with that picture of us and behind that septic truck?
Oh,
Hanson's
boy.
had a really good picture of
How
that.
did those-
It's dairy. Oh, yeah.
Of us?
No, who did I take that
I
picture?
got one
I
on my
have it.
phone.
You need to send that to me.
Daryl posted it to his Instagram.
Still email it to you.
Yeah,
Okay, it's it.
email it to the group.
I sent you the.
It's not as.
my room too as well.
There's only fun.
I saw
He
that.
has only farms, yeah.
I don't know if I want to. I just saw it the other
Yeah,
day.
we got 5 minutes.
So, which,
It's not a
what
slide.
slide?
It's not necessarily a slide, I was just gonna say.
Yeah, we had a slide
about
though.
Funding. You know, we are, I think, in the second or third year of our 5-year rate increases at 3% a year. I think everybody knows, we doing that to try to anticipate, we're trying to build up some cash, so we don't have to maybe borrow 140 million, you know, now. Don't get me wrong, we're probably still gonna have to borrow 100 million, I mean, we're not building up that much cash, but I think, you know, if we could buy down 20 million of the debt or 30 million of the debt, but I think we also understand that more sewer rate increases are gonna be coming too, but
I was going to refuse rate, sorry. But-
no, that's okay. I just thought people might be kind of interested in know. I think FY 27, the 5-year ends in FY 27. So we'll probably be coming to you during FY 27 to talk about.
Probably. Calendar year 25 sometime.
Well, Kelly and I could probably make like $50 selling tomatoes at the farmer's market.
Yeah,
Eat tomato starts. Get you some sugar mold. Get you some bread to go cup.
He didn't say shark.
Tenants party.
The tomatoes.
Tomato.
Tomato.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Okay, perfect.
That's one of the best ones. The
Yeah,
whole.
Mhm.
and I'm not joking. We
Oh,
will
actually,
make
it would be a great PR. It'd be a legit PR,
Yeah,
like I'll approve the budget for a banner.
there's no budget required. We have the garden.
Just need a set of keys, really.
All right, so with the last 4 minutes, if you think we got any other questions on the wastewater? Yeah.
I do have one question. I mean, you had mentioned stuff about the methane harvesting. I know we're utilizing that a little bit, but this new design will use some of that as well. Cedar Falls Utilities just talked about it with their rice plant potential. We wouldn't be anywhere near capacity to try and power something in-house for them.
No, so that has been looked at before, and we currently don't make enough methane,
Right.
but actually, what we're looking at for this process will probably not create methane.
Oh, okay.
oh,
It's a combustible gas that has a lot of safety issues with it. We're trying to get away from that as part of this process.
Okay.
Chase or Tyler, did you guys maybe want to talk a little bit about some of the nitrogen and phosphorus that we removed, that, how that could maybe be, included with some of our mulch or not mulch, but our compost?
The humanoid.
Solid
Yeah.
processing.
Yeah, so the biosolids, like community gardens number 2 is like I like to call them right now, right? They
Such a good name.
For the tomatoes.
The
Tomatoes.
There is a process where we can further dry that and turn it into either pelletize it or turn it into basically it's like 95% solids. Looks like a sand. They're really dry dirt part.
It's a Malorganite product like you buy at a farm store.
Yep. And we could, that would then be available for the public to be able to use in their gardens.
So cool.
Farmers can come and get it, they put it right on the lawn for fertilizer. So it'd be class A biosolids, so there'd be, we would have to have we would give you a waiver to tell you where it came from and how you can use it, but then it's just free for the public to use. So we could have a pile similar to the compost site, where they can just come and grab it.
Do we get enough volume to sell commercially?
I don't think we would, good.
There's a city in
It's
Wisconsin.
a lot more intensive to like add that bagging portion to it. It's a pretty high capital cost to add that.
Or sell it by the truckload? For
I think it's just,
landscapers?
I think
Probably
the
won't give
benefit
it away.
would just be that we could just give it away. Farmers may just come take it and
Not have
we
to go
would,
spread
then
it.
we wouldn't have to worry about spreading it.
I bet you $100 Hannah's gonna be bagging it and taking it to the farmer's market. Selling the baggies.
I'm thinking that's a pile that you'll have to show up early at the compost site to get.
That's a file.
Yeah.
That number is not included, 140.
The farmer's market stand?
The pelletizing.
Okay.
These are-
All right.
End on a low note. A brown
Was
note.
it- The bomb. All right, so for next, just to kind of give you a heads up then for next Tuesday, yeah, because we got council Monday, next Tuesday. We'll go through the infrastructure street projects and the updates on projects, which that stuff shouldn't take all that long, knock on wood. Then we'll run through the goal document. We've covered, I think, a lot of conversations that are in there, so I think should be pretty safe to be able to get through a lot of that, but any questions or thoughts or anything for?
Don't forget to wear your Christmas sweater.
Oh, yeah, are we doing the ugly Christmas weather?
It may not be ugly, but I'll wear it.
Christmas sweater.
Christmas sweater, council meeting.
Beauty is in the eye of the
Yeah, I
beholder.
was gonna say,
Good, we'll repeat on
Mhm.
Tuesday as well.
You're not gonna change it.
Usually have many, so.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Oh, before-
Want to have lunch?
Are we all, motion to adjourn? All, motion second, all in favor? All opposed? Meeting's adjourned.